You are listening to Cemetery Confessions, the world's #1 goth talk podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 16 of Cemetery Confessions. On today's episode, we are going to talk about violence towards goths. We look at the early post-punk era. We talk about cemetery desecration, happy goths, and we play a game called Poe or Not, Poe or Goth Lyric. For the album review, we have the newest release from Quintal, and finally, we are going to be talking about subcultural ideals and looking at hypocrisy within the scene for the philosophy segment. So hello everyone, welcome back. This is The Count, and I am here as per usual with my co-host Mark.
Hello.
And this month we're here with a special guest for you, and that would be Samantha. Hello, Samantha.
Hello. Thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you on. You've been you were one of the first 5, I think, probably YouTube channels I started watching.
Really?
When I was getting into that. Yeah, so I know you've been around for a while doing that. But if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to have our guests introduce themselves, tell us a bit about when you first got into the scene, maybe a bit about your YouTube channel, anything, let us get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, so I got into the scene around 13 years old. I started listening to like Fear Cult. I didn't know what the fuck they were at the time.
Yeah.
I actually bought this neo-goth CD at Hot Topic one day, and I didn't even know what I was doing. I was into Marilyn Manson. I'm still into Marilyn Manson, but like I was into like Rob Zombie and Korn.
What do you think?
Like new metal.
Have you heard his new album yet?
Marilyn Manson?
Yeah.
I have no interest in that just because he just kind of like plummeted.
Yeah, that's okay. Yes.
I've heard a few tracks from it. It's different. It's like he's trying to be David Lynch and failing. It's kind of like a weird bluesy type sound. Kind of hard to explain.
See, that's so different, like
The promotion is saying it's his best album since the golden age of the grotesque.
Really? And that's where he started changing, like, drastically, His songs were like, slower and stuff, so...
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail you.
Not at all. It's totally cool. Yeah, and then so I popped this CD in, and I got from Hot Topic, because I thought Hot Topic was, like, cool. And
yeah, well, it was. It used to be, I guess.
Right? So I popped the CD in, and I started playing the songs. There was, like, this band called Raised in Black on it. I'm, like, not a fan. But I played I played the Fear Cult song, and it was covering Boys and Girls. So I played the song, and I'm like, what the fuck is this trash? Like, really? What am I listening to? Because I'm, like, used to Rob Zombie at that time and shit like that.
Right,
and
yeah.
I was all into Metallica and shit, and like black metal, and
wasn't heavy enough, right?
I know. And I'm like, what the fuck? So then I started listening to the Switchblade Symphony song on there, which was Sweet, and I'm like, dude, I kind of like this, and that's kind of what started all of this. And at first, of course, I liked, Switchblade Symphony and just the surface bands. I started getting into Bauhaus and stuff, but I dug deeper, and now I'm here. My YouTube channel has been dead for months now, unfortunately, just because I'm trying to save up for a new camera, and that's no excuse to just go MIA, but I'm just, over here thinking, oh, well, my videos suck in quality. So.
Well, I mean, it's hard too. I tried doing YouTube for a while, and I do a 3-hour-long podcast now, and I think that's even easier than making YouTube videos.
Yeah, It's like, uploading the video, waiting for it to
editing and all this stuff.
Editing's the nightmare of it all.
Yep.
What's the name of your YouTube channel?
I go by GoreGothSam, just because gore is my thing, and I'm obviously into the goth subculture, so I just smushed it all together.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So I usually
awesome. Well,
just... Oh, sorry, go. What was that?
I was just going to say it was great to have you on. Sorry, I didn't... Did you have anything else you wanted to
Not
promote?
at all.
Or... Okay. Awesome. So, yes, it's fantastic to have you on. I'm really looking forward to hearing your opinions on some of this stuff. So we'll go ahead and do listener feedback real quick. We have a couple emails. I'm going to save those till the end of the show. But we did get a YouTube review a couple days ago. Let me pull it up here.
Oh.
This came from iLogic Girl, 5-star review. She says, "Great podcast, very professional yet laid back. Well done. Sasha is silly." So if you don't know, Sasha's my old co-host, so she must be
cool.
she must be going through from episode 1, so she might not hear this for a while. But then she says, "I love that you guys talk about how to dress in corporate and in a corporate environment, beer, music, etc. I also love that you are welcoming of different subcultures or subgroups of goth. Thank you." Which I thought that was kind of funny, because I think we tend to be pretty critical of other subgroups of goth on this show.
Of course.
But I'm glad
sure.
glad she thinks that we're positive.
We try not to be elitist.
But seriously, it's so hard to conform to something you don't like, and
yeah, I mean, that's a whole other. We talked about that at length before, but that's a whole. It's a fine line to walk. Let's just say that. And then, so just a quick update on the podcast awards. If you don't know, we were nominated a finalist for the podcast awards. Voting ended as of this recording a few days ago, so we won't know the results until April. So we will be, of course, we'll talk about it on the next show, but if you guys want to head over and follow us on YouTube, if we do happen to win, I'll post a video there with some information and thanking you guys, of course. That's just youtube.com/cemeteryconfessions. And then finally, just to mention very quickly, we are working on a top secret project that is going to be announced. Well, I'm planning on announcing it in a month if it kills me. So there's a project that I'm pouring a ton of my time and money into that is for you, the listener.
Dude, that's
and
cool.
It's going, and really the goth subculture as a whole. I can't really talk about it too much until it's announced, but I will say this, it's going to be amazing. And I would like to ask again, as I always do, if you could head over to patreon.com/cemeteryconfessions and check out some of the rewards that you can get for becoming a Patreon member. It starts at just $1 a month. There's a few different levels of different rewards. And if you sign up at just $1, you get rewards automatically starting there. So we have had a few people sign up recently. I just want to thank quickly Angela, first of all, who is a member at the Funeral Friends level. Thank you very much for your support. Also,
now everybody's all curious as to what the announcement is.
I know, fucking tease.
Well, Sam, I can tell you.
Oh, okay.
You just can't tell anyone else.
Spoiler,
Why would
it's
I
a
do
pony.
that?
Out of the show. All right, so let me... So, yeah, who did I say already? Angela. Also, Esperanza, who I had the pleasure of actually meeting at a club near me not too long ago. And then Larry, also thank you very much, who's been a Patreon member since the very beginning. And then also Dystopia, thank you very much for signing up on the Patreon page. One of the benefits you guys can get, I've started uploading YouTube videos for Patreon members only. I know some of you are kind of missing the movie reviews and other things like that, so I'm going to be posting those as extra content that you guys can get. So yeah, just go ahead and check it out. There's a bunch of cool stuff there. Patreon.com/cemeteryconfessions. All right, so with that said, we'll go ahead and jump into what are you drinking?
The blood is pulled from the vein, of course, with a lancet, and it's usually within the main veins and such. And pretty much we'd connect it over to an area, a receptacle or something like that. If I were to do a feeding, it would be about 1 vial.
So you drink people's blood?
Correct.
All right, well, you guys can go first because it'll be quick. What are you guys drinking?
What are you drinking, Mark?
I'm drinking cough medicine because I'm sick.
If you actually take shots of that throughout the show, it'll function similarly to alcohol.
There you go.
I've heard. I might take you up on that.
Yeah, I'm drinking fucking water because I'm just that cool. Actually, some fucking ants got in my Coke bottle. I'm so pissed.
Oh God.
I know.
Jeez.
So there's my life.
Way to be a nonconformist, you bastard. I am drinking a special beer. This is from Deschutes Brewery. It's called Black Butte.
Wow.
Classy.
This is the 26th. Yeah, if there's two things I like, it's black and butts. It's the 26th birthday reserve version. So I'll just read the quick synopsis here on the bottle. It's an ale brewed with pomegranate molasses. 50% of it is aged in bourbon barrels, and then it's blended with ale that has cocoa nibs and cranberry added. So it's a porter. It's delicious, and you guys suck. I'm going to drink by myself.
I will not deny that. Okay, so
Normally, we would go ahead and jump right into the news, but I have something quickly I wanted to talk about. There's a new goth radio show. We were the only one for so long, and now there is another one. It's called Gothropology. It just started, I think probably about 2 months ago, and it's actually broadcasted live on a community college station and then uploaded afterwards for you guys to listen to on the internet. But it's a anthropology focused show that also discusses spirituality and like women's rights, human rights, and some sort of through a goth lens, I guess. So I wanted to bring that up quickly just so you guys could check it out, because of course we want to support other people that are doing cool things within the goth scene, and this sort of spoken word radio medium is really underserved, so I wanted to mention that. But also, they had a recent episode that was titled The Shape of Goth to Come, and that was with Alexander Void, and they discussed this idea of the future of goth and where it's going, something we've talked about at length on the show. And so I wanted to get your guys' input on this. I have a few excerpts here. So the first thing I pulled out, basically sort of some quotes and paraphrases of what was going on, from what he was saying. So the first thing is, he says that we have to accept that industrial is the way things are going in the dark scene, that we have to embrace that and use that in goth culture.
No. Not necessarily.
We have to? Oh, wow.
Yes.
And I like industrial, by the way. I'm not just saying no.
Yes, and I do as well. And actually, I've just recently started getting back into the club scene, and in Chicago, it's very industrial heavy, but there are a lot of goths, so we pretty much all meet up at the industrial shows. But I've said it before. I think industrial is its own scene. It's separate from goth. It's sort of like a music scene that really sort of starts and ends with the sound and the fashion, which a lot of it is heavily borrowed from goth.
It's just more of an obnoxious level of any kind of fashion in that scene, and I don't mean to talk shit, but
right. And I mean, I think like he says that's where things are going. I think the problem is that
it's kind of already there.
I mean, certain places, I can't speak for other places, but industrial being electronic, it's a larger scene because there's, electronic is more popular, so there's more people that get involved with it that way. Goth has always been a small subculture, but just because the two scenes intermingle and are sort of closely related doesn't make them one and the same. And I don't think that we should start blending those and forcing goth to be something that it's not.
Yeah, and try to redirect them that way. No, I mean, come on. I mean, industrial to me is I'm trying to find a word that doesn't make me sound like I'm talking shit. But, I mean, like, seriously, it all sounds the same to me. Like, I mean, I say like I mean a lot, but you can cut that part out. I've noticed out here, and I'm sure it happens everywhere, the industrial clubs, I guess you can say, are 18 and over, and that's usually a big difference, you know, as far as like 21 and over, people are a little more mature, and but
yeah, definitely.
Sometimes.
I mean, it is it is definitely a larger scene. I've seen it myself. You know, I go out a lot, and I try to avoid the industrial clubs, and they have a few out here in Ventura. But yeah, there's way more people there than the one I like, of course. And I don't know how these people dance to this stuff. Like, I don't understand that. But anyway, it definitely
requires a lot of stomping.
Yeah, and like, sorry, but I don't want to get punched, and you know, I don't need to get punched here with.
Right. You know, it's funny because, and that's, you know, don't feel bad about having an opinion. That's fine. When I went, the last time I went, it was very much, we actually convinced the DJ to play some post-punk and death rock stuff towards the end of the night. But there were the cyber goth people dancing that were doing the really sort of stompy, violent stuff. And then there were, like, you know, more traditional looking goth 90s and before that looking goths that were just doing normal goth dancing. And then you had a bunch of normal people that were just doing their
there for
thing.
The show.
Yeah,
I guess, I don't know. So
well, I've actually seen both ends of the spectrum. Like, I've been to clubs where it's been all power noise, like not just industrial, but power noise from beginning to end. And
see, that's, you know, I really like power noise, but 6 hours of power noise makes me want to vomit.
Yeah, you go to bed and you hear in your head.
Yeah.
And the club I go to now is completely post-punk. So that's kind of weird.
I'm so happy that exists.
Yeah, but the thing is, you know, when I used to go to like the industrial clubs, I was like, oh man, I really miss the post-punk, and you know, why can't they play goth music, you know?
Yeah.
And now that I've been going to the
trying
post-punk,
to pay the bills.
Yeah, going to the post-punk club for like a year maybe.
Yeah.
I'm starting to miss industrial music, so. You know, personally, I think that the best kind of club is one that plays everything.
Yeah.
And do you guys not have that out there? Because I mean, we have a few clubs out here that have like different rooms, and they'll play different, you know, genres, of course.
Yeah, we don't have any of those.
Fucking sucks.
We do have in Chicago. Mark and I don't live close to each other, but in Chicago they have post-punk nights. Like, there's every 3 months there's one really big one called Back to the Grave.
Oh, that's cool.
And then, you know, the normal clubs, there's a couple normal goth clubs. They'll throw some like old goth stuff in there occasionally, but for the most part it's a very industrial centric scene. But so just to run through the rest of this quickly, he said he wants to stop using the term goth and use the term new noir. He says he's, quote, bringing in the new goth, and he's accepting and even pushing change.
Oh, good luck with that, bro. Come on.
So I guess my question is, like, obviously I don't agree. He's starting a brand called New Noir where he's selling clothing and stuff. So it was sort of hard. He didn't specify whether he was trying to push his brand or if he was trying to rebrand goth. It really sounded like he was trying to rebrand goth.
Yeah, that's like me making a clothing line called only 80s fucking goth. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's called 80s goth.
But so Samantha, let me ask you, where do you stand sort of on the balance between looking to the past and staying true to what goth has been, and also evolving as a subculture to either stay relevant or to stay alive or whatever?
That's a tough question. I definitely do, of course, support the 80s, early 90s scene, or, because that's how I dress. That's what I like. I don't like all the D-rings and spikes, but
right.
I do, however, I find that I keep stuttering. Sorry, I'm so tired. I find the crowd that I hang out with, and I love them to death, but they are very cliquey. And
yes, yeah.
Aside from that, I feel like, of course, I wasn't born in early 80s and, late 70s when this all started, but I definitely feel like we should appreciate the roots, if that's what you're trying to ask.
Yeah.
And
I agree with
definitely acknowledge it, because a lot of people don't. I'll read off some bands that I just listen to every day, and people are like, "Who the fuck is that?" I'm like, "Really?"
Yeah.
Well, I think experimentation is good, like for finding new genres and stuff. But I think the key is like keeping the mood and keeping the theme and the atmosphere well grounded in a goth aesthetic. I think that's the key.
So
you said it well, Mark.
Here's and then to close out, I just have what I sort of summed up here. I said, to his point, he does say, quote, "Let's acknowledge the past, but allow it to evolve." He complains about emphasis on the past. And I think that's sort of due to the fact that many new people to the goth subculture have no concept of where it came from, like you said, Samantha.
Yeah,
and I think
exactly.
it is so important to educate that history for many, for a lot of different reasons. Tastes evolve and people change, but to evolve the subculture beyond the parameters of goth, of what is goth, will cause most of us to leave the scene. And, that's really sort of a scary thought. Like, if it continues to go in a direction that is not traditionally what we think of as goth, I think a lot of people who are elder goths or have been in the scene for a long time are just going to stop calling themselves goth.
Yeah, because it's going to be a fact of it's going to be a factor of like, oh well, I don't want to associate myself with that name anymore, because people are fucking getting crazy with it. They're labeling anything as goth. My fucking dinner table's goth now, like like.
Yes, and so then, and then just to say to him, like, so his personal experience, he says his personal thing is that he enjoys the avant-garde fashion, and he enjoys mixing that with goth, and he enjoys mixing industrial music with post-punk music.
Which is totally fine.
You know what? Yeah, it's fine. That's great. It's cool that you enjoy that, but I think to try and force that change onto an entire subculture is pretty, like, self-aggrandizing. Like, go ahead and do your own thing, do your web shop, if people are into that, be into that. But to try and change what other people like and call it something else that you like, I think is pretty fucked up.
Oh, you know what? Go ahead, Mark.
Well, I was just gonna say, the guy, he says he's a businessman. I mean, he claims to be one, and that's fine. If he's selling a product to make a profit, then so be it. Yeah. But you don't want to exploit the goth culture just to make money.
And I think the whole thing in the 80s and the 90s with the whole, with zines and with small retailers and DIY and all that stuff was to fight against the, corporate absorbing the subculture to make it into something hip and cool that they could sell to the masses. It's exactly that's not the spirit of goth.
Yeah,
all right. anything else to add? We can move on here.
I was just gonna say that he'll probably most definitely get laughed at. I mean, I don't know. I just think that's
I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that I've said this before, that if you look at about every 10 to 12 years at the history of goth, there is a shift. You have the 80s to the 90s. The 90s, you have like the second wave of goth music and sort of that whole shift towards the darker, more ethereal aesthetic rather than the harsh like post-punk stuff. And then you go to the mid 90s to the mid 2000s, and that's when you have sort of the more forming of the industrial stuff and the cyberpunk stuff. And I think now we're another 10 years down the road from there, that I think that's why you see all these weird street goth, pastel goth, new goth, all these things, because it's going through these growing pains, and you have this, the influx of new people into the scene that are more connected to different pop culture stuff that they're interested in, and they want to bring that into it. So
you're also seeing a resurgence of post-punk, I think.
Yes. Well,
there's a good handful of bands that
yeah.
Like I remember seeing this magazine article talking about like this group of bands that are kind of in the indie scene, but they're kind of looking the part of post-punk and basically playing a lot of Cure, Joy Division sounding stuff.
Okay, well that's cool. Yeah, I mean, I guess what I was saying was I wouldn't be surprised if he finds an audience, because I think we're sort of in that phase again where things are changing, or people are trying to breathe new life into something that's not. I mean, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But I don't know. All right, we'll go ahead and jump into the news segment.
If this boy did this, and the gothic, stuff that went around it, and the motive and everything, don't we all sort of want to know? That could be our teenager. That could be our kid doing that. How could that possibly happen?
Being described as being involved with the goth movement, but what exactly is that? We kind of know it when we see it, but some aspects of a goth lifestyle could they provoke such a murder?
All right, the first news article.
Go ahead.
The first news article we have is titled "One Woman's Story of Being a Victim of Subculture Hate Crimes." So I'll go ahead and jump into this, and then we'll talk about it as we go. It starts when Ashley Pritchard ran for homecoming queen at Marshall University this fall. And actually, may I point out quickly, Ashley Pritchard, I believe, has liked Cemetery Confessions on Facebook and commented a couple times. So that was cool to see. She knew that there would be negative reactions to her campaign. She lived with bullying her whole life from a young age, when Pierce would tell her she was a Satanist on the playground, to last summer when two men pointed a gun at her and told her it was freak hunting season.
Holy shit.
Yeah. I've never had a gun pointed at me, but that's really fucked up. In fact, it was this bullying that encouraged Pritchard to run for homecoming queen. I wanted to prove a point that differences don't necessarily determine our place in society, and if you work hard, you can be anything, she said.
Yeah.
So, just right at the top of this, I know Mark and I have sort of mentioned a few instances, but are there anything you can recall that you might want to mention of sort of abuse or discrimination or verbal like threats or anything like that for being goth?
Okay, so here's an interesting story. I grew up in I didn't grow up in Compton. Let's just rephrase that. I went to Compton High School for 3 of the 4 years of high school.
Wow.
Yeah, so you'd think that people would bully me, but I had never, ever, ever had a threat in my life. I think it's because people thought I was actually, like, very dangerous. They thought I was, you know what I mean? Like, the stereotype.
See, I always
shit,
had...
like,
I always had people asking me if I wanted to buy drugs. Nobody thought I was dangerous, but everybody thought I was a drug addict.
They all thought I had drugs and were trying to buy them from me.
Yeah, but they all, they just asked me, hey, do you do witchcraft? And like, I'd be like, dude, right. I don't fucking have the time for that shit. Like, I'm not doing that shit, you know? Like, ain't nobody got time for that. So,
yeah,
and they wouldn't ever do that though. I don't know. I feel so different from everybody else because you'd think I get bullied and everything, but I really wasn't. And I guess it was just that fortunate, you know? And, but I did get a lot of people wanted to be friends with me because, like I just said, they thought I was dangerous.
Right. They wanted to be edgy.
They're like kind of kissing my ass and like, hey, Samantha,
right.
You know, like, don't fuck me up today, shit like that. But of course, I would just.
I saw a lot of that. Yeah, I saw a lot of that with. There were a couple girls at my high school who were goth and also Wiccan, and there were other Wiccans at the school, but that weren't goth. And nobody really cared, but the couple that were goth, like everybody was terrified of them.
Oh, of course.
They were always like, don't talk to her, don't mess with her. She's gonna cast a spell on you. You gotta stay away.
But I mean,
all right, so
I feel like I couldn't really relate to that subject, but I do think it's fucked up.
Yeah.
Obviously, this girl got fucking guns pointed at her.
Yeah.
That is so scary. I mean, I can't even imagine being in that situation. You know what I mean?
I've only ever experienced verbal abuse, people, yelling at me or, pretty much every time I go out, I get rude looks or people avoiding me or, things like that or being prejudiced and things like that. But yeah, nothing. I know goths who have, experienced physical violence. Usually it's from people who are drunk, like leaving a club early in the morning and there's drunk assholes out on the street that are, either being sexually abusive towards women or just like there's a guy who looks effeminate and they want to be, a piece of shit and push them around and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely.
So it goes on here. Pritchard identifies as goth, which means she dresses differently from most people living in West Virginia. That might be the problem, is she's in West Virginia. And these differences have caused her a lifetime of taunting. She shares some of these experiences on YouTube, where she is known as Lonely Goth Girl 12. That's all one word. In her YouTube series, Goth in Public, she chronicles what it's like to identify as a goth growing up in the Bible Belt, a nickname for the region in southeastern and south central United States where being a conservative evangelical Protestant is a significant part of the culture. While some of her stories are positive and feature children telling her how beautiful she is, many are disturbing. In one video, she talks about a man who started performing Hail Marys after noticing her.
Oh my God.
In several videos, she discusses people who follow her as she runs errands just to yell insults at her. You know what? The Hail Mary thing, I may have told this story before, but my wife and I and my son, my beautiful 2-year-old son, and a couple of goth friends went to the Renaissance Fair. Yes. We all went to the Renaissance Fair. And you would think the Renaissance Fair would be a safe place because there's just a bunch of weirdos and nerds and all kinds of people there.
Yeah.
We walk up to it, and there's a family. There's a bunch of people milling around at the entrance, and there's a family where the dad it's a dad, a mom, and 2 children. And the dad notices us, and he gets his family's attention to point at us, and then they all hold up, like they make a cross symbol with their fingers.
I would have laughed
and
so
stare at
fucking
us
hard at them
as we walk. Yeah, I mean, like
I would have probably given them a gesture of my own.
Yeah, that's what my wife did, and it would have been hilarious, but the fact that like this guy was goading his children into acting this way was just so depressing.
That's really
that he's raising his children to be prejudiced against people that look different. It's just.
And that's how, I'm sure that's how they're all fucking raised, like.
Yeah.
Oh, this guy's wearing all black. Oh man, he has long hair. It's the end of the fucking world.
I don't understand why people would actually, take the time to, you're talking about them when she would go out and run errands, how they would actually make the effort to follow her.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even worth it. Like, why would they do that?
They're just trying to get a fucking rise out of them, you know, and trying to start some shit, fucking instigating over here.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think part of it is just general ignorance.
Oh, of course.
I mean, you know, I'm sure people who are, you know, different ethnicities or, you know, gay people or, you know, anyone who's not a white dude would, you know, have had experiences like that. And it's just people being afraid to have their simple minds challenged by something different than what they believe, I guess. I don't know.
People hate change, basically.
People hate things that are different.
I was just gonna fucking say that. Like, seriously, you know? I mean, really. I don't understand that. I never understood that.
I think challenging yourself, doubting what you believe, always looking at other opinions, other belief systems, other whatever is like so important to becoming a better person and having a better society. Because if you're just living within what you think is okay and never questioning that you could possibly in your wildest imagination be wrong, that's when you have, you know, dictatorships and like racist movements and things like that happen. It's so important to challenge yourself, challenge what you think, and always be open to hearing other perspectives.
Exactly.
All right. So, sorry, my wife's over here making fun of me. She's mocking me as I talk. All right. So let's see. Perhaps what is most frightening is that this is not an isolated incident. We fellow goths can sit there and share incidents for hours. It is almost universal, and it's scary, says Pritchard. Which, speaking of, if anyone wants to email the show and tell us your experiences with discrimination, I'd love to read them. Or, you know, if you have had great experiences, tell us those as well. Listening to Pritchard, it's obvious that the issue of assaults targeting goths needs to be publicized in the United States. I don't want other kids to go through that, says Pritchard. More often than not, law enforcement doesn't take these attacks seriously, leading to more violence. And alternatively, a news article we covered, 6 months ago, the UK actually has a law now that makes discrimination against subcultures a hate crime.
Wow. They are smart.
Yeah.
Is that Sophie's Law?
I think so. I know it, at the very least, the Sophie Lancaster Foundation was a big part in pushing to get passed. But yeah, absolutely. I think that's important. I think
desperately need that here.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not probably not going to happen.
No.
These people are fucking ignorant.
I mean, even if you look at I don't know what state that was, but that just passed the religious protection law.
Indiana.
Yeah.
I was going to say it'll get vetoed in Indiana for sure.
I mean, when you have stuff like that getting passed, I don't think we're anywhere close to a subculture protection law.
It's really sickening. I mean, this country is just shit in every fucking way, but...
Let's see, where... okay. While campaigning for Homecoming Queen, Pritchard had her posters ripped down, urinated on, and written over. It doesn't really matter, said Pritchard, about the vandalism. I touched Marshall students. I made a point, and the amount of positivity shows how much times are changing. Pritchard used her campaign not only as a chance to debunk the negative stereotypes that surrounded goths and subcultures, but as an opportunity to raise money for the Trevor Project, which is an organization that provides crisis intervention to LGBTQ youths. So that's great.
Wow, yeah, that's good.
Pritchard may not have been crowned Homecoming Queen, but she's not bitter about it. Instead, she's happy that she had a chance to stand up for herself and what she believes in. Based upon what's being told to me, consequently, it seems that many people see alternative people as immature, lowlifes, too free-spirited, the products of bad parenting, unwilling to contribute to society, or jobless slobs living in their mom's basement. But she's not letting the misconceptions control her life. In a few months, she will be graduating with a bachelor's degree in psychology and plans on getting her PhD.
All shit, girl. You go, girl.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that is.
She says, people may harm you, but it's because they're afraid. Afraid of what a black-clad kid stands for. Challenge the status quo.
Wow. I like that statement.
So, sort of speaking to that, to being afraid of what's different, I just wanted to mention quickly, I was actually listening to, and so we covered social prejudice in another show. It was episode 10, I believe, and we really went deep into that, what causes it, where it comes from, how people are trained to think that way. But I actually came across a term on another podcast that is sort of an unofficial term in academia, which is cognitive laziness. And that means that people sort of go about their lives and notice one or two traits about a person or a thing, and then immediately make assumptions about it and move on. And this has sort of been tested extensively through studies and things like that. And personally, I think that marketing and pop culture in general sort of reinforces this. If you look at marketing, especially, basically they encourage you to associate feelings or different color combinations or different shapes with a certain product. And I think in America, we sort of operate on expectations rather than reality, and often miss what's going on, like what's actually going on around us, so that when we do get challenged, whether somebody presents an idea that we don't agree with or haven't considered, or we see a goth or something like that, we immediately just sort of become defensive because it challenges it. We actually have to think about it, and then we write it off as something that's negative so that we don't have to do the mental work to sort of work through that. And I think that American culture sort of fosters that. I mean, I don't know what you guys think about that, but there's just sort of a...
And the thing is, it's not like our culture is just completely innocent. It's the complete opposite. I think that people just kind of hide all the negative traits underneath this glossy exterior. And, when something comes along that challenges their, sunshine and rainbows perspectives, they freak out because it's like they don't even want to come face to face with the darker aspects of the culture. But that doesn't mean that they're not there. I think it's actually a lot healthier to just to be honest with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the same reason why people walk by homeless people every day and don't think anything of it, because it's easier for us to just say, well, you know what, that person's probably a drug addict or an alcoholic, and so there's no reason I should give them 5 seconds of my time. And I think it not just discrimination towards people, but just sort of that lack of empathy and caring about other humans. Or, thinking someone who's gay, well, they're just like this sort of alien who has absolutely nothing, could never possibly have anything in common with me. So they're just a piece of shit, and I should just avoid them.
Or that goths are immature, low-life, too free-spirited, exactly. The products of bad parenting, etc.
Yeah. Products of bad parenting. That one's funny. That one's really funny.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So let's move on to something a lot more fun and interesting. This is going to be the Edgar Allan Poe or Goth song lyric challenge. And you, Mark and Samantha are going to face off head to head to see who is the gothist.
Okay.
And this is going to be the definitive test of who has the most goth cred.
I'm gonna say
here we go. Here we go.
So this comes from Flavor Wire. So Edgar Allan Poe's birthday was in mid to late January, so that's why they posted this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a few lines of poetry or song lyrics, and you guys will have to tell me whether it is from a Edgar Allan Poe story or if it is from a goth band, and you will get extra points. You will get extra points if you know either the name of the band or the name of the song.
Here we go. I don't do Edgar Allan Poe at all, so I'm fucked.
So let me pull up a scoring sheet here. Okay. Mark, I spelled your name with a C. That's fine. All right, here we go.
Okay.
So the first one here.
I prefer a Q at the end of my name.
Okay, well, fuck you, Mark. I'm leaving it how it is. All right, so
That's
first one.
F-U-C-Q.
All right. Tend the horses, let them crawl, put them in cages, open your eyes, and despite what's deep, longevity.
That's a goth lyric.
That has to be.
All right, Samantha, your answer?
I agree with him.
Final answer, everyone? Okay. This is a goth lyric. This is from the song Moonchild by Fields of the Nephilim.
I knew
it. One of probably my favorite song by them. Pretty close to it. All right, here we go. We got another one.
Here we go.
Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming, dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before, but the silence was unbroken and the darkness gave no token.
That would be Poe.
Yeah. I'm not sure. It definitely doesn't sound like a goth lyric, so it sounds a little too brooding for goth. What am I saying?
Is there such a thing?
I know.
It sounds too rhymey for me. Like I mean I know goth lyrics rhyme, but
well, yeah,
that one just sounded too much like a poem.
We're putting 5 seconds on the clock, Samantha. Can we have your answer?
Okay, I'm thinking it's Poe too.
Okay, and you are both correct. It is a Poe, it's from The Raven. So, also extra points if you can guess what poem or story it's from. Alright. Next up, I should have made like a buzzer or something to make this spicy. Maybe I'll throw that in. Alright. Here's the next one. And in her fear, she sought cracked pleasures. The passion of lovers is for death, said she.
Bauhaus.
Licked her lips and turned to feather.
That was easy.
Passion of lovers. Yeah, it was
Okay,
all in the
awesome.
lyrics there.
Extra points to both of you. Mark, I'm assuming you knew.
Yeah.
Did you know the song name?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I think that was the first Bauhaus song I ever heard. Before I heard Bela Lugosi's Dead, it was The Passion of Lovers.
You know what? I'm skimming through these, and this might actually be really, really easy. All right, here's the next one. Oh, man. This is really easy. I hear you calling Marianne across the water, across the water.
Sisters.
All right. I will need spoken answers, though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Marianne, Sisters of Mercy.
Okay.
Does
album
Sisters
first,
count
last,
when
and
I
always.
just cut it off there?
Okay. All right, there we go. All right, here's the next one. Beneath the pressure of torments such as these, the feeble remnant of the good within me succumbed. Evil thoughts became my evil thoughts became my sole intimates, the darkest and most evil of thoughts.
I am definitely gonna say that it's Poe.
Poe, yeah.
And that is The Black Cat by Poe. Yeah, this might be... Someone who is not goth may have...
Hey, maybe you can look some up and just, like, throw some random shit in there.
I mean, I have a book of Poe compendium sitting over there somewhere, but I'm not sure where it is.
Nice.
Actually, yeah, no, I have no idea where it is. Okay, next one. In her sepulture... I still don't know how to say that word. In her sepulture there by the sea, in her tomb by the surrounding sea.
I'm gonna say Poe.
Yeah, I'll say Poe too.
And And that is that's Poe. It's his story, or his poem, Annabelle Lee, which is actually one of my favorites. All right, next up, pleasure is bleeding to smother the words.
Oh my
the
God.
four walls drain me dry
that's Christian
of all
Death,
imagination.
Sorry. Christian Death,
Yep.
Cavity, First Comedian.
Yep.
Okay, well, you guys are too goth for me.
See, we're
too goth
Hey,
for this.
but I don't-
we're racking up like
Poe, though,
thousands
so-
of goth points.
I know, right? But I don't do Poe, so I mean, like, you couldn't even pay me to fucking come up with the correct name for the poem. So.
Yeah. So, Mark, if you can score an extra point here, you might win. All right.
You know what they should do? They should rework this, either Edgar Allan Poe or Cradle of Filth lyric.
Oh shit.
See, you're right. You know what?
That would be more difficult.
Danny Filth has a degree in English, doesn't he?
I'm not sure.
At least you would think so by reading his lyrics, but yeah, possibly. All right, next one. The skies, they were ashen and somber. The leaves were crisped and seared. The leaves, they were withered and seared. It was night in the lonesome October of my most immemorial year.
Oh jeez.
I guess I'll say Poe.
Yeah, that sounds like it would be Poe, just because it doesn't sound familiar as a goth lyric.
All right, you're both correct. That is Ulalumi by Poe. I don't know what that one is. All right, we got another one here. From the cradle bars comes a beckoning voice.
Come
it
on.
sends you spinning.
Spellbound.
Susie,
Spellbound.
Yep. Spellbound.
These are I thought we were gonna get some obscure lyrics.
I
here,
knew
but-
we were gonna get those fucking surface bands. Like, seriously. Come on.
Let's see, what's this? What's this next one? All right. There's locusts in there. She's got the old fool gold.
Oh, fuck. Sounds so familiar. Sounds so familiar right now. Okay, I can't remember the name of the song though, but I think it's Cockatoo Twins. I think. Okay, that's gonna be my
Mark,
final
do you have
answer.
an answer?
Yeah, I'm inclined to say it's a goth lyric, because I can't see Poe having a line like "there's locusts in there." As far as the band, I'm kind of at a loss.
All right, and we're going to have to wait while I kiss my wife goodnight.
Good night, wife, if she can hear me.
They say goodnight, wife. No, she can't. She says goodnight, people. And the answer is goth lyric. It is the Cockatoo Twins in the Gold Dust Rush.
Oh, but I get like
Did you
a
say
half
Cockatoo Twins?
Cockatoo.
Cockatoo?
All right, here's the next one. Death has reared himself a throne in a strange city lying alone.
That sounds like it would be
That's
Poe.
Poe.
All right, and that is Poe in the city, or the city in the sea. Man, this is easy. All right, there's a few left here. I think the goth lyrics are more fun, just to see who knows what the song and band is. All right, here's the next one. And burn me with your mouth on fantasy for the war with kings, for I have found my terrible beauty. This golden law has a silver smile.
That's Sex Gang. I fucking love Sex Gang. That's Sex Gang. That's, Starts with a B. Starts with a B, Barbarossa. I think it's Barbarossa. That's my final answer.
Mark, do you have a...
Yeah, I think she got me that one.
So what's your answer, though? You're agreeing
Goth
with her?
lyric, yes, it's a goth lyric, but I didn't know the band.
Okay, so Samantha, you got that completely right.
I
Sex
love
Gang
that
Children
fucking
Barbarossa. Man, these are easy. Let me see if I can sort of pick out a few. All right, here's the next one. Am I all alone? A vision of mine is becoming clear. It's all so new it can't be true. Sometimes the words appear in my head.
shit.
Well, I would say that's a goth lyric.
Yeah, I think so too.
And that is It a Dream by The Damned.
Oh, no wonder, dude. I'm not trying to make up any excuses, but I do not listen to The Damned.
What is wrong with you?
I don't know.
All right, next one. A mortal melody, while a bolder note than this might swell from my lyre within the sky.
Is that gonna be Poe there?
I'm gonna say Poe.
You guys are not making this fun. You're both right. All right, let me just read a couple more here. Okay, how about this one? An anthem for the queenliest dead that ever died so young. A dirge for her, the doubly dead, in that she died so young.
That has to be Poe, just because it's rhyming.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Poe, but I do think it could work as a goth lyric.
And that is Lenore by Poe. All right, well, we'll do one more. That's A Forest by The Cure. That's way too easy. My eyes is all gray, and I haven't slept in days. Locked up
alien
in
sex fiend.
Yeah, now I'm feeling zombified.
All right, so final tally that you're correct. Now I'm feeling zombified. I was just singing that literally yesterday. Final tally, Samantha wins by 3 points.
But Mark, you're still a winner in my eyes.
Well, I am at a disadvantage because I'm sick tonight, so...
Oh, blame the sickness.
Oh, yeah, sure.
The sinus in my brain is hindering my thinking.
That's the problem.
It's blocking the goth part of your brain, the goth lyric part.
That's right.
It's a whole lobe up there somewhere.
The bats in there are drowning in mucus.
Exactly. That's fucking so gross.
All right, so the next article we have, another fun one. It's titled 25 Things Left Behind from Your Dark Days as a Mall Goth.
Were we supposed to have a list for this?
I have a list for this. There's a link. The link is now highlighted if you would like to follow along with it. If you see it there in the document, I just highlighted it, so I think you can see that.
And most of these things I still have.
So, yeah, we can, I'll just read them off one at a time, and we can say yay or nay, I guess, or tell funny stories if you want to do that. All right, number 1, a pair of piled and gray-footed black and white striped tights.
Yay.
I own 0 tights, so I can't,
Nay.
See, I'm effeminate enough, so I can pull off the tights.
If we reach the $300 Patreon level, we will post a picture of Mark in black and white striped tights.
Holy shit, that's gonna be a sight to see.
And nothing else. Only
nothing
the tights.
Else. That's it.
Man. I need this just for my own private collection.
And a binky.
Exactly.
And a binky in your mouth.
Number 2. Your last half a jar of Manic Panic's Pillar Box Red hair dye. Yes, I do have an empty one in my bathroom upstairs.
That's pretty funny. I
don't have any currently.
Yeah, I never dyed my hair with Manic Panic products before, so I'm not. Nope, nay.
Number 3. That's what they sold at Hot Topic, and I was like, oh,
yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
It's a goth hair dye brand. I'll have to buy it. So, number 3, the ticket stub from your first mindless self-indulgence concert. That would be a no for me.
Yeah, no.
I have seen them.
I've never even really liked them, so. They're sort of one of those bands that are on the periphery of, like, industrial culture, and you sort of hear about occasionally, but they're not really...
I have to be in the mood for them. for me to be.
They're fun. I mean, their lyrics are very funny. I'm just not a big fan of the music.
I saw them with the Birthday Massacre several years ago.
They seem like they would go like together. You know, I mean, just the way they dress and stuff. And
number 4, one Emily the Strange arm warmer. The other one is probably lost in Spencer's gift somewhere.
Okay, that is not a yay for me, but I loved Emily Strange. I fucking loved her. I had this shirt, and I wish I still had it. It was like half black and half red. And the red part, had the cat, like half of the cat's face on it, and the black part had Emily Strange's face. And it was fucking amazing, and it's gone. And it wouldn't even fit me now, but you know.
Yeah. I thought it was cool, but I didn't know what it was, and I think it was mostly like female stuff, like purses and things like that. Mm-hmm. So,
wasn't there a comic or something? Because I think I had like a comic.
I don't know. Maybe. I
think there was, and it's funny. I have I thought I was bold enough to actually steal 2 $14 necklaces of hers at the store called Oz. That's AAHS. It was kind of like a more poppy-er Hot Topic back then. But I got caught, and I'm like, dude, is Emily Strange even worth this shit? Like,
what are you in for?
Dude,
still some Emily the Strange stuff.
Dude, I was wearing my Metallica shirt.
That's hard time.
I was wearing my Metallica shirt and fucking like got handcuffed and shit and walked to the back.
Oh my god!
Both of my parents
They're probably
had to
trying
pay
to scare you.
Oh, dude, I know that you can't come in here ever again. I'm like, all right.
Yeah. I'm fine with that.
Yeah,
exactly. Okay, so number 5, a somehow chewed up bottle of liquid black eyeliner from Walgreens, which you use to make yourself look like a drugged panda. That would be a yes from me.
Yeah.
You know what? I wasn't really into liquid eyeliner because I was just fucking horrible at it at the time, but definitely pencil eyeliner. Right.
Yeah, no, I never used liquid. It was always pencil for me. I missed that. Yeah. Even now, like I tried to, I went out the other night and I didn't have any. I tried to use my wife's liquid eyeliner and I was like, this is miserable. Why would anyone ever use this?
Now I'm like perfection at it.
Oh, you use that all the time? Oh,
all the time.
Maybe okay, so the answer there is that I suck at makeup. Okay, thanks for that.
You're welcome.
Number 6, a Susie and the Banshees tee you bought, even though at the time of purchase you had yet to listen to Susie and the Banshees.
Nay.
No, I was buying all like mostly metal t-shirts, I think, back then. But
same here.
I don't think they had Susie and the Banshees t-shirts.
Yeah,
like
maybe.
Hot Topic.
Probably I thought the mesh, not mesh, the long sleeve t-shirts that have they're like mesh.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I thought those were fucking cool, but most of the t-shirts I had were like metal shirts.
Yeah, the most brutal shirt I had was a Bathory shirt, but it was not even pertaining to anything that you could get at Hot Topic.
Yeah. Number 7, Invader Zim pillowcases.
Never a fan, so nay.
Yeah, neither was I, actually.
I do like the show, but I didn't have any products for Invader Zim.
Number 8, Invader Zim blankets. Number 9, Invader Zim tea cozies. Number 10, Invader Zim tampons.
Cool. Why couldn't they just combine all that?
I know it was a big thing with mall goths for sure.
Oh, sure.
I didn't have cable, so I think that's why I didn't get into it. But I remember seeing a lot of it at Hot Topic, and I definitely did see a few arm warmers at high school. Which apparently, the high school I went to when I was there was like the golden age of mall goth because there was like 30 of us, and we were all
awesome.
that into heavy metal but trying to dress goth but didn't really know what the fuck it was thing. So and then
like Mudvayne and
Yeah.
And
then
Linkin Park.
Yeah. Well, not Linkin Park, but like
Not
some like
Linkin
death metal and stuff.
Yeah, same here.
And then we all graduated in 2005, and apparently since then, I've only had a couple of friends that, like, a few years after that who were still in high school, but they were all gone. And then it's been replaced by, it was like emos after that, and then it was different something else after that. But I think I was just fortunate that I was, because the house that I lived in was so conservative Christian and oppressive that I didn't know anything. So I'm really glad that even though it was shitty mall goth stuff, like, at least I was exposed to something kind of cool at the time.
Yeah.
Number 11, actually everything Johann Vasquez ever drew, wrote, or coughed on, and its subsequent merchandise.
It's Jonan. Get it right.
Jonan?
Gall.
What am I missing here?
I don't know who that is.
I don't either.
He wrote Invader Zim. He wrote Johnny the Homicidal Maniac.
Okay.
Squee. So that's a yay for me.
Okay. Number 12. I wish I had this. A mug with South Park goths that states "Life is pain," which you still drink from, ironically or not ironically. I fucking love those South Park episodes. I don't know about anyone else, but
yeah, they're great.
Okay, people hate me for this shit, but I don't do South Park. The only funny thing about South Park to me is Cartman and the way he talks. But anything else, I don't know.
I don't really watch, I don't watch South Park. I've seen a few episodes that I've heard are the better ones, but I've seen all of the goth episodes or goth and vampire episodes, and they are all amazing. I definitely suggest, I think they're all streaming on Comedy Central, like, especially the older ones, Samantha, so if you just search goth, I think.
Okay.
I definitely suggest. They're really funny. They have really great 90s goth stereotypes.
Yeah, of course.
It's great. It's really good.
I think it would be a good web spinoff. Just about the goths.
It's good. It's really good. All right, number 13, a photo bucket account filled up with 436 pictures of you and your friends drinking big gulp cherry slushies in front of 7-Eleven.
Nay.
I don't know why slushies are a thing, but I definitely have an old photo bucket account filled up with really embarrassing photos that I won't tell anybody about.
As do I.
The next one, a vagina-bearing black and plaid miniskirt you can't believe your mother let you wear in public.
Yay.
No.
Did you? Were you showing off your vagina?
I was showing off my mangina.
No, not for me.
I dated a girl who had a cool, what I thought was cool, black and plaid miniskirt. But looking back, it's not so cool.
Not at all.
Number 16, a gigantic pair of trip parachute pants you can't believe your mother let you wear in public.
Not gigantic, but definitely trip.
Yeah, I still have... Oh no, you know what? I went through a purge about 4 years ago where I threw all 6 of my old high school trip pants away, but I mean, that was the thing. That was all I could get, was those pants from Hot Topic.
I think they're kind of, like, if they don't have the zippers on them, I think they're kind of comfortable, it's breezy down there and it's nice.
Well, the problem was, so they were like $60 to $80.
Yeah,
and being in high school, I didn't have a lot of money. So I would buy them and then wear them forever. And so then they would start to rip and fall apart. And I'd have to safety pin them. And then the safety pins would start to break under the weight of what they were holding. And they'd start stabbing me in the leg. And it was just, it was bad. It was bad all around. Like, it was a bad purchase idea in the first place, but.
We make sacrifices for fashion.
Beauty is fucking definitely pain.
Number 17, an aggressively fine black shirt by Morbid Threads that you're pretty sure you can make it work with the right styling, but still haven't worn since 2003. Truthfully, it's weird it still fits because Molgoth body types are usually limited to either skeletally thin or land whale. It's just you worked really hard to get past that. It doesn't really make sense.
I like how all of these are very specific.
Yeah. I mean, that's how it was. It was either skeleton or very large, but
yeah, exactly.
That would be a yes for me.
That's a yes for me.
Number 18, generalized low self-esteem. I've gotten over that since high school, but yeah, I understand where that's coming from.
Is that like general free-floating angst?
Yeah,
like teenage angst?
Oh,
Maybe.
Definitely. Yay, here.
19, a burned copy of AFI's Sing the Sorrow with the track list written on a CD and Sharpie, so there's zero confusion.
Not at all for me. I never liked them at all.
Yeah, that's a nay for me.
Yeah, I didn't get into them, but I definitely knew goths in high school who swore by AFI and thought it was the coolest, gothiest thing ever.
I remember that.
I do
era.
like Black Audio. It wasn't that a spin-off of AFI?
Yeah, that was his like foray into electronic music, but
I thought that was more tolerable.
I fucking hate to admit it, but they played a song from them at the club when I went the other night, and I liked it.
Well, whatever. Fuck it.
But yeah, I guess, I mean, before the internet, or before having uninhibited access to the internet, you took what you could get, I guess.
And I guess there wasn't as much like splintering like we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Like not as much back then, so it was like I guess more okay to listen to different stuff.
I guess. I don't know. Number 20, a long-standing rapport with the employees at the IHOP in your hometown. Rapport here meaning that they say, quote, "Wow, you're still living here? Didn't you graduate college like a year ago?" And you say, "Wow, you're still working at the same IHOP for a decade now?" You know, with your eyes. Oh man, there was a group of it was like crust punks and goths that would show up at an IHOP every month, and I think that's been going on for almost 10 years now. And I think there's still at least one person that still works there. So yes, I know people who still do that.
Well, for us in the South, it was Waffle House.
Oh yeah, yes. Oh man, Waffle House is so good.
Yeah, and years ago, we could actually, back when they let us smoke in restaurants and back before clove cigarettes were banned, we would smoke cloves in Waffle House, and the waitress hated our guts. We would come in, and she was like, "Don't you smoke those fucking cloves, because it gives me a headache."
Oh, you know what? They told, there was a specific, was it Denny's or IHOP, but I never went there because every time I went, I would smoke cloves, and the waiters would tell me they would not allow cloves or cigars to be smoked because something about the smoke being thicker. Even though it was a cigarette, it was like the actual real clove cigarette, not the fake cigar ones that they have now. Yeah, so they always complained about it, and so I never went back there. But number 21, a half punched Hot Topic punch card. I don't know where it is, but I know I have to have one somewhere because I collected those things like they were fucking gold back in high school. 22, botched piercing holes done with a thumbtack, never closed up properly.
Not at all.
I'm too much of a pussy.
Same.
Yes, me too. I did witness a punk kid in high school in chemistry class pull out a, of course after telling a bunch of kids like, "Hey, look what I'm gonna do," pull out a safety pin, light it, sanitize it with a Bunsen burner, and then shove it through his ear. I was like, and at the time I was like, "Oh my god, this guy's so fucking cool. I wish I could do that." But I'm glad I didn't. 23, a live journal publicly documenting 5 years of angst mixed with the quizilla of "What happy bunny phrase are you?"
I actually, I don't have a live journal account, but I did make a Quizilla once when that was popular back in MySpace days. And I did make a How Goth Are You one, but who knows what the fuck happened to that.
Yeah. I think I made one too.
I did have a live journal with a whole lot of angst in it. But I don't think I had the Happy Bunny.
Yeah, I remember when LiveJournal was a thing. Last week I found out that I still have a blog spot that is still online that is filled with a bunch of really shitty, angsty goth poetry I wrote in high school.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's cool, though.
And I was like, oh, hey, this is cool. I have like a documentation of, and as soon as I started reading it, I was thinking, oh my god, I must burn this. No one must ever see what I have written. It is absolutely atrocious. It's the
Damn,
worst.
I wish you had a
fucking thing I've
sample
ever read.
for us right now, man.
Yeah, I wish I did, but I'm not reading it ever. Or
Not
Is there a page where it has like the word fuck like 100 times and then you at the end?
You.
No, we're pretty close. Pretty close to that though. Number 24, a spiked bracelet you hid from your parents, and it's so well hidden you only assume it's still in your room.
I did definitely have spike bracelets.
I still do have spike bracelets.
Yeah, the house I grew up in, everything was hidden. So, I did have that, and I used to, go to school early and then do my makeup and pull out all my bracelets and like necklaces and
Get
stuff
ready
and
at
put those
school.
on, and then, yeah.
For the goth attire.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you have to do.
And then finally, number 25, an ungodly amount of Nightmare Before Christmas related Christmas presents that continue to accumulate, including the Jack Skellington slippers that your dad got you this year after you put it on your list as you close in on your 24th birthday or whatever.
Not really over here.
Yeah. I loved and love Nightmare Before Christmas, but I don't really have any. Oh, you know what? I do. My wife and I went to Hot Topic, maybe, I don't know, no, it couldn't have been. It was like a year and a half ago. And just to try it, we were looking for something, and I found a pair of matching bracelets that say "Together Forever," and one of them has Jack Skellington, and the other one has Sally on it.
Oh, isn't that cute?
And yeah, I know. And I was like, "This is the best thing ever." So we've both been wearing them, and I was like, "We should get this to show that we're both together." And she's like, we both have wedding rings, right? I was like, "No, this is more important.
This is cooler."
So we have both had those for most of our marriage.
That's cool. I have one, like, maybe 10-inch little, like, very skinny tin that has, it's like a shaped of, I can't even speak right now. It's shaped as a coffin, and it has Jack Skellington, on the front of it, but, and I keep my tampons in there, so,
there you go.
That's the only thing I have, though. And it's funny, because, I mean, my little sister's all into that shit, so she's following me, thankfully.
It's so good, and for me, like, this is so embarrassing. I was not allowed to watch that movie. My parents forbade it.
Wow.
And then exactly. And then when eventually I saw it at I think my ex-girlfriend's cousin's birthday party. And I went there. I went to the party, and then I went in the living room, and for some reason they were playing Nightmare Before Christmas. And I walked in, and I watched it for a few seconds, and I was like, holy shit, what is this movie? This is amazing. And they told me, and I was like, I fucking hate my parents. And then I sat in the room the rest of the night and watched the movie. And so, yeah, I still love it. I haven't watched it in a while, but.
I have a shirt with Nightmare Before Christmas on it, but I think that's the only product I have.
Okay. All right. That was it. That was 25. We'll go ahead and move into the last news article here. And this is titled Somewhere Leather, Somewhere Lace, and it's actually a book review for the book of the same title, but it does talk a lot about goth in the 80s and the differences between then and now. So I thought it would be good to talk about.
And that's definitely
so it starts off
lyric from Sex Beat, by the way.
Yeah, so it starts off with the lyric here: some too hot, some too cold, some are poor, some are rich, some so lonely, and some they bitch. Some are lovers, some friends in bed, some have listened to the things we said. And then it goes on to say these were the lyrics. Yes, it is. These were the lyrics of a 1983 song by the post-punk goth band Sex Beat. The opening line is a fitting choice for the title of Andy Harriman and Marlowe's new book, which describes itself as a worldwide compendium of post-punk and goth in the 1980s. Originally funded through a Kickstarter crowdsourcing campaign. Crowdsurfing is something completely different. Most of the funds went to the costs of reproducing photos. Its publication is a true reflection of the DIY ethos that it celebrates. The post-punk goth era is notoriously difficult to define, and so the authors do not even try. While delineating the period as roughly 1978 to 1992, they explain at their outset their aim is not to define genre or subculture, but rather to celebrate the individual creativity of those performers and fans alike who were part of that scene. Recently, I was actually talking with Mark and our Patreon member Angela, who is at the Funeral Friends level. We called her and spoke with her for a while because that was one of the rewards she got. And you know, when we were talking, I mentioned that I was thinking about this disparity between the current death rock and goth scene, and how many of the early post-punk bands made it a point to disassociate themselves from goth in this modern day and age because they were so different. So I came to the conclusion that while goth grew out of that early 80s scene, and I'm sure some of those people that were in the scene did grow into goth, that they weren't really the same. That early post-punk scene is not the same as what we call goth today. You know, yeah, Bauhaus took inspiration from Gothic literature, and there were some historical influences, but that early scene really was just a music culture, and they were expressing themselves artistically through fashion and music. It really wasn't much more than that, which is completely different, obviously, from the more encompassing idea of goth today, as having many facets. Some people sort of view it as a lifestyle choice or like a philosophical worldview. So now the through line there between the early scene and now is sort of the social relevancy of the lyrics of the post-punk bands and their focus on death, realism, sadness, etc. I think that is the strongest connection between the early post-punk scene and modern day goth. But when we hit the early 90s, like I said, we have that second wave of goth. We talked about it in another article. Some of the bands from that era were saying that the early guys weren't goth enough in their sound and in their lifestyle. And I think that I'm sort of coming to a place in my life where I can understand why many death rockers don't make that jump or that journey from the early scene to the current scene because there's such a disparity. So yeah, I mean, personally, I have sort of that, for me, goth is really that sort of mid-90s. Like, I think that's sort of the pinnacle where you have the intersection of post-punk and the more brooding, ethereal sound of goth music, and also the sort of forming of goth as being more than just a genre of music and a like melting pot of 80s fashion and like weird dark aesthetic.
That's really when the label, I think, started to manifest itself too, when people started knowing, like, hey, okay, that's a goth person. Right.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, especially in the early scene, there wasn't really a name for it. And, you know, then there was the music journalists who sort of coined the phrase gothic or goth. and then we sort of took that over and made it into meaning sort of this encompassing culture, that it wasn't just a youth subculture, it wasn't just a music subculture, but it was more than that. It was how we lived, it was how we identified. And I don't know how you guys feel about that personally, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. My journey has sort of been from not understanding why people like Peter Murphy would say they don't identify with goth to saying, okay, I understand why they want to distance themselves, because there is a difference. And, you know, maybe sometime in the future, if goth continues to change and be like turn into this weird avant-garde, what was it?
Neo-noir.
Yeah, some shit like
man.
that. You know, I could see myself saying I'm not goth anymore. I'm just whatever. You know, I don't know. I don't know if you guys have thoughts on that, but.
Well, I think, like, I can agree to an extent that goth as a subculture didn't really have a strong identity and label until maybe like the mid 90s or something. But at the same time, I do consider that 80s post-punk era to be a part of goth culture just without the label. Like, I think the mindset might have been a bit different, but I think that difference is only from the fact that there was no label and there were not, like, expectations that come with a label.
Well, I mean, okay, so obviously, you know, goth as we have it now would never exist if it wasn't for that early scene. But the thing is, you know, I hear, and I wasn't around back then, so I don't know. I hear sort of conflicting stories, but one of the things I've heard is that the gothic label and the goth label, as it sort of started to come out in the early, or I guess mid 80s, that people that were in that scene, that early post-punk scene, either made fun of it, didn't identify with it, or took it as an insult. I mean, I have also heard from people that were around back then that they did identify with it, and they did sort of, you know, use it as a label, but...
We need to get someone on here.
I don't know.
We're all too young.
Any thoughts, Samantha? Otherwise,
okay, so like I've never had a chance to really talk about this, so
okay.
I'm pretty vague with what I think of it, I guess.
Right.
What I'm trying to say is like basically I agree with you both. I agree that the early to mid 90s was definitely the peak of the subculture, because if you think about, I mean, obviously Susie, you know, she had a darker style, but if you think about what am I trying to say, like Bauhaus, for example, and The Cure, they were dark, but it just, what am I trying to say, they basically, they started it all. That's what I think, you know. And
right, okay,
it's probably sounding so fucking cliche, but I definitely think that the music was a huge part of it. So, I mean, like I said, I can't really say much about it because I don't ever get this opportunity to talk about it. So, trying to come up with it all right now.
I actually didn't, usually I ask in the beginning, but how's your local goth scene where you live?
Where I live?
Is it?
Yeah, so here in Ventura, we get a lot of those little industrial followers.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like me and my one friend Danny are truly into the death rock, more, you know, the death rock and traditional 80s goth than everybody else here in town. But I used to live in LA, so that was where it was pretty huge. So
yeah,
and
that's cool.
There's a lot of different clubs out there too. So not just industrial and goth, but they have a room dedicated to erythritol and stuff like that. So I don't know if I'm saying that right,
Okay.
but
yeah, I don't know.
ethereal. Haha, there you go.
Oh, okay.
So
I thought you were talking about a band. Okay, yes.
Oh shit. Sorry.
Yeah, I love ethereal music. Yeah, I mean, if anybody out there knows or is someone who was at the Batcave when it was around, please email me because I would love to interview you. But yeah,
help us, enlighten us.
The whole thing. I mean, there's a few outspoken people online who write about goth or who sort of try to document the early days. And so we sort of only have like maybe 3 or 4 people to go by as like a compass. And I have heard different things from different people that are sometimes conflicting. Just not even like people that have websites and stuff, but just people who have been in the scene for a long time. So I don't know. It's hard for me to sort of form an opinion on it.
Same
but
here.
This goes on
I feel.
And it says, in this visual and oral history, the very amorphousness of the line separating performers from fans reveals one of the key characteristics of the scene. The show is both on stage and in the audience. As one contributor put it, for with their dramatic outfits, makeup, hair, fashion, and personal styles, the fans could and often did draw even more attention than those on stage. And I think that's sort of still how it is.
Definitely.
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but whenever there's a goth band that I want to see in town, or even, I mean, the club is sort of a different thing, but concerts specifically, I go half for the show and to see the band, and a big part of it is just to see who's going to show up and what are they going to look like and how are they going to act and all that kind of stuff.
I saw Clan of Zymox last year, and I'm so sad that I missed them last weekend here. And they were just so simple, I don't think they ever went into makeup and stuff. And I saw them for the first time, and they looked exactly how they did years ago.
It's so great that they're still around making music.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I saw Dead Can Dance a couple of years ago.
Oh, fuck you. How much was that concert ticket?
Maybe like 35.
Oh, you piece of shit. Okay, they played in Chicago when they were doing that tour. And they played in Chicago, there's a outdoor amphitheater that has like this huge, orchestral, like full band stage, and then it has this big, wide open seating. And the tickets for that were like to sit in the back were $80. And to sit in the front were like $200 something to sit closer to the front. I wanted to go so fucking bad and see Dead Can Dance. They're one of my favorite bands. And I was like, I can't afford it. I just cannot afford it. What is happening? But, well, I'm glad to see that they were cheaper. Because I had another friend who said that his ticket was like $150. Wherever. Geez. I don't remember what state.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm not remembering it correctly. Maybe it was more like 45 or something. But I think at the time I was willing to pay anything to see them. But I don't remember it being like insanely expensive. There wasn't like some huge orchestral amphitheater or anything. We were just kind of in
You're a lucky piece of shit. So.
We were in a concert venue.
All right, this goes on and says, dramaticism, write the authors, is one of the universal ideas that is centered around post-punk and goth. The book offers this in stunning visual display, black and white and full-color photos of people and styles, both staged and candid, as well as set lists, posters, album art, and other ephemera from the era, convey the paramount importance of drama and creativity. There's even an entire photo collection of footwear, which sounds awesome.
Oh, man.
The book offers glimpses into parts of this history that remain surprisingly dark and hidden, even by goth standards. These are among the most fascinating bits of research the authors and contributors provide. The emergence and challenges of the scene in remote Finland, the struggle to build post-punk goth communities in the Soviet Union, where obtaining dark fashion was as difficult as attaining albums, the growth of the scene in a Spain slowly emerging from fascist dictatorship, even after the death of Franco. Which is just so crazy to me that there's such, even in cultures that are so incredibly different from Western culture, that are oppressive and all these kinds of things, that there's such a universalism to goth that it blossomed and had sort of a foothold in these countries. Is just crazy to think about. That even in cultures that are so completely different, that it still sort of had an attraction and an identification with it. Let's see. So
too bad it's
fashion,
frowned
of course,
upon.
Yeah. Fashion, of course, was central to post-punk and goth. An eclectic range of randomly outrageous fashion eventually coalesced into the dark look that is today associated with these genres. Balancing style and authenticity is harder than it sounds. The goal was not to replicate. A goth had to appropriate and re-examine, to look similar but also distinguishable as an individual. A challenging concept that was often time-consuming in practice. Interviewees offer elaborate tips and instructions on the complex hairstyles and makeup artistry they used to achieve their unique looks. Today's goths can purchase intricately ripped and torn clothing for hundreds of dollars at a wide range of internet and specialty clothing shops, but a far different class identity originally permeated the scene. Poor or not, the goal was to be different from others by employing ingenuity. Clubgoers scoured charity and thrift stores, recycled their grandparents' clothes, and sewed their own. Do you guys have thoughts on that? As far as
DIY,
that's awesome.
DIY, what is it called? DIY.
DIY. Yeah, as far as like then and now.
Yeah, I mean, imagine they didn't have internet back then, and shit like that, and
yeah,
it's just so crazy how we have.
I think, yeah, it's great. I mean, I think there's sort of an implied derision in what they're saying, that they're sort of like saying, oh, well, you guys can just buy whatever you want on the internet. I don't know. I think there's still a strong DIY sect of goth for sure. But for me, like personally, I've tried, believe me, I've tried. I'm not good at makeup or things like that. And, I'm very appreciative that there are people who are good at their craft, that are small vendors, that are dedicated to the goth subculture, that are providing services, non-corporate services to people in that subculture, in that niche, that I can support as sort of, a lot of the clothing, I sort of see as artistry. I sort of see it as, you buy a beautiful painting that someone spent a lot of time on and put a lot into. I sort of see it as the same. And for me, yes, I think DIY is very important. I think it's a very important part of the goth scene. But if someone were to say, well, it's not really goth anymore because you can buy it online, I think, I just don't think I agree with that.
Yeah, that's
same here.
Stupid. I mean, like you said, if you don't have the skills per se, I mean, what the fuck are you supposed to do? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, that's a little absurd.
Right, and I think, if I can support someone who is in my subculture and who is very talented at what they do, I don't see the problem with that. I think that's good. I think, that's support of the subculture. I think it is supporting the subculture.
Oh, definitely. There's a lot of.
All right,
what was that?
Go ahead.
Oh, there's the people down here in LA that run Release the Bats and New Church. they do pins and shit, you know, for people, and you fucking ask them whatever kind of pin you want, and you have it, you know. And I don't know, I think, you know, and there's a lot of people I know that sew their own clothing together, and they service other people, you know, that can't do that. So
all right, so it goes on to say, let me move this here. One interviewee recalls her penniless youth. She bought oversized shoes from a secondhand shop, which she stuffed with cotton. Our clothes were not supposed to be for sale in some shop. We became very creative in making clothes. We bought very cheap, bright-colored clothing, small tins of black textile paint, and a bag of salt. With ropes, we tied knots in the clothing. We put a large enamel pan on the stove, put water and salt in the textile paint until it started boiling, then put the clothes in it and stirred with a wooden dipper for 30-some minutes. Another recalls, since I never had money, all my clothes were sewn from old curtains.
Wow, that's crazy.
Man, I have to say, I am absolutely envious of the ingenuity that went into the DIY
that's
scene, man.
Dedication.
That's insane. Yeah. Crazy. I wish I was that cool. I wish we
didn't have many resources as we do now, so we are forced to do shit like that.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I think, you know, when you hear like the early post-punks like say that, well, we're not, since we have so many retailers and, you know, sources to get clothes from, I think they believe that because they had so much dedication, they kind of think that maybe we don't simply because we have those sources, but I don't think that's necessarily true. I mean, some of us, you know, I will admit, I'm not good at it. I'm not good at DIY at all.
I mean, there is a saying though or a cliche that's something I can't remember exactly, but it's something along the lines of lack of resources is the mother of ingenuity or something like that. Yeah, I can't remember exactly, but I do think that, you know, that the economic and cultural and sort of economic class that people were in back then and what was available to them, and you know, there is an argument to be made to say because everything is so readily available now that nobody there's less of a motivation to create your own thing.
Oh, of course.
Because other people can do it for you. So, yeah, I guess there's two sides of that.
That doesn't mean that the spirit isn't there.
Right, yeah. I agree. All right, it goes on to say the heyday of this particular post-punk goth movement is tagged by the authors as the mid-'80s. The opening of London's famous Batcave in 1982 is often inextricably tied to the emergence of goth as a distinct genre, reflecting the merging of a recognizable yet still infinitely creative style and sound for a few years. Thereafter, the flourishing creativity and experimentation of its bands and artists, which defined the genre's immense potential, became so pluralistic that it begins to fission into more distinct scenes. Some bands come to integrate more electronics into their work, pioneering the industrial and electronic music genres. Other bands went the other direction toward a more guitar-focused sound evocative of rock and roll and even psychedelia. Thus, Gothic rock was born. But more importantly, the creative spirit itself seemed to ebb, and while the music and the fashion, at least a pale version of it, lingers on, the author laments its contemporary form. Simply wearing black does not verify one as a goth, they write. The skewed interpretation of the genre has tainted the original. Raw roots that were based on the dramaticisms of glam and the freedoms of punk. Has everyone just grown up and moved on? Will no one get up and do something? Do you guys have an answer to that? Do you have opinions about that?
Oh, well, go
There
ahead.
are other ways of expressing ourselves, not necessarily through DIY, but through other means.
Exactly.
I think you can be just as much of a goth, and express your feelings through writing or through music or, you know, through online radio shows. But you know, just because we don't do DIY doesn't make us any less of, you know, a part of the scene.
Yeah, doesn't mean we're not creative in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, I don't know, I think that's sort of a grumpy old man thing to say. I mean, I understand where it's coming from. And maybe, who knows, maybe 15 years from now, when I'm looking back at how goth has changed, maybe I'll feel the same way. But I think right now I think there's a balance to be struck. And I understand why someone would want to be on the extreme of either side of that argument, because you want to steer the ship in a certain direction. But I think if we were all sort of more moderate in our positions, that it would be a lot better. All right, so it finishes off a couple paragraphs here. Well, the authors have done something, at least offered a stunning and inspiring visual showcase. Have offered a stunning and inspiring visual showcase of what this creative era had to offer. The bulk of this thick book is comprised of photo collections and offers a lush visual representation of an era that was dark and pale in tone, yet rich and vibrant in energy and creativity.
I like that metaphor there.
I do, yeah. I like it. I like it a lot.
Or whatever
I've
you
got
want
a
to
little
call
goth, a little goth semi going on here. It's great.
Oh yeah. Gothgasm.
In closing, the authors express the hope that something of that spirit remains, lying silent like Bela Lugosi himself, dead yet undead and waiting for resurrection. Ironically, what is most missing from today's music scenes, they argue, is the very need for togetherness that brought goth and post-punk, erstwhile outcasts, together in the club that sparked some outpourings of creativity. Today, youth are happy to sit alone in front of a computer, ordering their clothes and their music off the internet. Ultimately, that damn you internet, back in my day, we had to write letters to each other. Ultimately, this is a paean to the do-it-yourself ethos from which post-punk and goth were born. Today, young people are served youth culture on a plate, writes an interviewee. It is a commodity to be bought. We had to seek things out for ourselves. You couldn't buy what you wanted. You had to invent it yourself. I don't know. So I have some thoughts about that. I don't know if anybody wants to comment on it, but
I agree. Like, I don't like the whole "you kids and your internet." You know, the tone of it is kind of condescending, but I do agree that and this isn't just for goths. This is like the culture as a whole. We are becoming an increasingly isolationist society. You know, you see the malls going away, you see the arcades going away, you see the record stores going away, and you know what kind of culture are we if we're just stuck by ourselves all the time? I mean, for some people that's perfectly okay, but I think as a culture and, you know, as a subculture, you have to have togetherness. You have to, you know, it's therapeutic, and it helps like define and help the subculture progress and, you know, keep moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I see both sides of it. I saw a post on Instagram, not Instagram, on Imager the other day where it was a mother was telling her daughter, "Oh, you don't understand what life was like before the internet." And then she talked to her 96-year-old grandmother about it, and her grandmother said, "Yeah, don't worry about that. My parents told me you don't understand what life was like before electricity." So I think in one aspect it's sort of, it's just sort of old guy syndrome, stuck in their ways.
Right.
But on the other hand, yeah, I mean, there is definitely a strong scene. Like, so when I'm starting to get more involved in the goth scene that's local to me, there is definitely a strong scene, and it's definitely a lot of camaraderie, and there's also a lot of problems that come along with that. Actually, we're going to talk about that next month. But I don't know, because on the one hand, yeah, there's the temptation of I can stay home and interact with these people online and never have to actually put myself out there, get out of my comfort zone and talk to someone in person. But on the other hand, you have people living in a small town, middle of America, nowhere, that has no goth scene.
Right. And
for them, that's a godsend. So I don't know where, I don't think it's okay to insult either side of that opinion, but I don't know where we sort of strike the in-between stance of that, because it is both good and bad. So
yeah, I think when it comes to the point where staying at home has become the alternative to actually going out to a club when you have that opportunity, and you choose not to go to the club, and this isn't just like, a one-time thing. If you don't feel like going to the club, that's fine, but like, if consistently you just opt not to go to a club when there's one in your area, or
a concert or event, or
yeah, just any kind of gathering. I don't know.
Any thoughts, Samantha? Otherwise, I can close up here. Yeah.
I was actually very DIY in high school, and I didn't have much to create, but I made a Demure gear patch, and I fucking did it by hand, and it was one of the new logos, but I stuck it on my backpack and shit like that, and I used to cut my bell-bottom pants up on the bottom and stitch them tight together, so I had really tight pants, and that was about it. But I mean, I don't do that anymore, surprisingly. But.
That's part of the good, right? Is that we have the option, because
yes,
I know people who are between 19 and let's say like 24 that are artists that sell art, that do DIY very, very well, like goth DIY stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if you have a person that has that creative drive, and that is maybe, I don't want to say hipster, but maybe someone who's just sort of fed up with that internet culture or the status quo or that kind of thing, they can branch out into that, and they can look up that kind of stuff, how to make it, to get started on the internet. So, people who have that creative drive and who have that capability, still have the option of getting out there and making art and that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, not all of us had internet, and not all of us have the fucking drive to do it. So it's like a two-way.
Yeah, or the time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and some of us have fucking money to spend left or right, to not give a fuck. And just want the best thing out there. So.
All right, so this finishes up saying, well, you can buy the book, and DIY or not, it's sure to please both nostalgic post-punks in their 50s on your Christmas list, or the restless grandchild who's casting about for inspiration. Will the ethos of the punk and goth rise from the dead, or should it even bother? The reflections of one of the era's interviewees seemed appropriate in closing. The very thing that seems most worth resurrecting from post-punk and its commitment to change. This belief was expressed both in the conviction that music should keep moving forward and in the confidence that music can transform the world. even if only through altering one individual's perspective or enlarging one's sense of possibility. That is going to be the last news article. We will jump into a couple quick news articles we have here. The first one is from bloodydisgusting.com. I'll read an excerpt here. Jack Houston, who played Richard Harrow on Boardwalk Empire. Have either of you watched that show?
Not at all.
No, I haven't.
Okay. I've actually heard good things about it, but I have not watched it either.
Same here.
He has been officially cast as the lead in the upcoming remake of The Crow. The film is a remake of the 1994 Alex Proyas-directed action thriller, which starred Brandon Lee in his final role. Obviously, we all know that. Directed by Corin Hardy and written by Cliff Dorfman, the film will begin shooting in the next several months. So we've sort of been updating you throughout the year about how that remake is coming along. I know on the Facebook page we've had a lot of very opinionated comments about that. I don't know, Samantha, do you have any sort of connection to The Crow? Do you care about a remake? What are your thoughts?
Okay, no. The Crow's a cool movie. I haven't seen it in a long time. No. I was just gonna say,
Okay.
I'm a big fan of Beetlejuice, and that's one of my favorites. And I heard that one's coming out, and I'm like, oh shit.
That is coming back, yeah.
But
well, that's
The
a sequel.
Crow. Exactly. But they're remaking The Crow then? I mean,
They're remaking the original, yeah.
I don't know about that.
And the director, the guy who is writing it, said he wants to be true to the original comic, and he wants to be respectful of the original film. But yeah, a lot of the feedback we've gotten on the Facebook page has been negative. A lot of people saying, why mess with it? It's a classic. Just leave it alone. There's no need to make some sort of, Hollywood remake of it. Personally, it's sort of a wait and see for me. I mean, I don't know. It could be terrible, and it could, as with all of these things, the Labyrinth remake or sequel. I don't remember which one it is. The Beetlejuice thing, the Twin Peaks sequel. It is safe to say, leave it as it is. It's a piece of art that stands on its own. There's no need to mess with it. But on the other hand, you really don't know. It could be something really good. So I don't know. I'm sort of a wait and see.
I get these images in my head of like this stylized Michael Bay looking action film with, some muscle-headed douchebag as, I'm the Crow. I'm here to kick your ass.
Or like just a really bad actor in general, so.
I just get these cringe-worthy ideas when I see news about remakes, but, if he says he wants it to be, so true to the original movie, why even bother with a remake? Why not just let the original movie stand on its own?
He just wants to make money.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see what happens. All right, next up, the book Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Do you guys know?
Aren't they making a movie about that shit?
They're making not making like a movie, they're making a documentary about it. And the documentary is going to sort of cover like the history, where it came from, how it affected the youth, why did so many schools ban it, why was there such an adverse reaction to these stories when it got so many kids to want to read and to be invested in stories? How does horror stories and sort of underground forbidden books of that nature sort of affect culture? Those are sort of the topics that they want to cover in the documentary.
So cool.
There is currently a Kickstarter for, an Indiegogo for the documentary they're making. It's being crowdfunded, so I don't have a whole lot of information. Most of it is covered in the trailer for that's on the Indiegogo page. So if you guys want to check in the show notes on the website, there's a link to this article, and there is then a link to, actually they have the video embedded on the page, and there's a link to the Indiegogo page. So if that book affected your childhood, which it certainly did mine,
yes.
I don't know. I remember. First of all, I remember my parents being terrified of it and saying it was evil, and then I remember it being read to me in the library of my middle school for it was something related to Halloween, and they read a few of the stories out of there, and I immediately was like, this is the coolest fucking thing I have ever heard in my life.
Right? I mean, like, the artwork is fucking fantastic. Like,
yes.
it's literally scary. Like, it's fucking frightening. And yeah, I was always a big fan of that when I was in school.
Yeah, and there's some crazy story about where the artwork came from. There's like some really, really crazy stuff. I read about it like maybe 4 years ago, so I don't remember exactly what it was, but the whole thing is like shrouded in mystery. So I think this documentary will be great. And if you guys check out the video, it was really intriguing. I think you might want to support it. So yeah, that'll be in the show notes. And then finally, for quick news, dark vampire tale Let the Right One In is getting adapted for TV. Have either of you seen Let the Right One In? Either the original Swedish version or the Americanized?
Both.
I have
Both?
never even heard of this.
Okay. I have heard of them, and I have never seen either of them. Let's see. So according to Hollywood Reporter, Teen Wolf immediately instills confidence. Teen Wolf showrunner Jeff Davis will be teaming up with actor-writer Brandon Boyce to turn the Swedish novel Let the Right One In into a TV series for A&E. The book had previously been adapted into a phenomenal Swedish feature film with the same name, as well as an English-language version entitled Let Me In. A&E won a bidding war with Showtime for the series about a mysterious vampire girl and the curious bullied little boy who befriended her. And I think the kids they're like middle school age too, which is
yeah, they're like 12.
Unique. Yeah. The other cinematic versions have been moody, atmospheric, and refreshing, a totally new take on the typical existential vampire story. The series will reportedly take place in Vermont, and when a pattern of murders start to spring up, a mysterious federal marshal with his own dark history will show up to investigate.
I don't really see, having seen the movies, I don't really see, like, how it can really be adapted, unless they're just, like, taking the name and putting in a completely new plot behind it that's like kind of similar to the movies. But
so yeah, I mean, here's this article says it'll be interesting to see what tone they are able to strike. A&E's scripted content is certainly dramatic, but the writer's past experience is based in the teen soap opera Teen Wolf. I can definitely see them trying to attract a younger audience to the network with a little bit more action, but I hope that doesn't take away from the restrained, dark tone of the original. So yeah, for me, I mean, I think, especially hearing Teen Wolf attached to it, I think this is just a case of, well, hey, vampires are popular. Here's a property that we haven't molested yet with our corporate Hollywood, like, fucking Twilight bullshit. So let's take this cool original idea and then turn it into some dumb bullshit.
And the characters weren't even teens, so I don't even know how it can work, as a teen series, because they were 11 and 12, I think.
Yeah, I'm definitely against this. I mean, when it comes to like, okay, so I watched the show The Originals. I don't know if either of you have seen it.
Haven't seen it.
it's embarrassing to say, it's a spin-off of Vampire Diaries, but it's actually a really good show. It's sort of, I mean, it's like a vampire soap opera. So, I mean, the thing is, like, you can sort of look at something like that where it's like where it's an original property, its original content being sort of this a lot of times base level romantic trope style storytelling with vampires. You can sort of take that and make it like a guilty pleasure and be okay with it. But when you take something that's actually really well written and really like a work of art, and then turn it into something like that, I think that is where it becomes offensive. All right, so that will close out our news segment, and we're going to go ahead and move into the philosophy corner.
You don't wake up one day and decide that you are goth. It's a mindset. It comes naturally. It's a lifestyle.
Just so you know, goth is about 3 things: clothing, music, and lifestyle.
I don't actually have a problem with the goth stereotype of the droopy music and the lots of eyeliner and all black.
It's not about being depressed, and it's not about being sad and locking yourself in a dark corner and just writing sad poetry until your fingers bleed. A lot of people think that goths are Satan worshippers, or, you know, they sacrifice animals or they drink blood.
The goth culture is finding beauty where other people wouldn't think to look.
What is goth? It started out as an artistic movement about 400 years ago. Gothic art, Gothic architecture, Gothic literature. Where do you think we get the term Gothic novels from?
To me, what goth is a movement where people who like a certain type of music dress in a certain way to express that taste in music, and that's all it is. It's just an aesthetic thing.
So what makes you goth is not to do with any kind of criteria. I don't know why people set out criteria.
There's a very few things that I actually call goth. You see, that is the difference between old school goths and many other people, is that we are very cautious about what we call goth, actually.
A lot of kids become goths because it just looks cool, you know, and that's fine too. But at its core, it really is this this dismissing of the mainstream belief that we're happy all of the time and no one's ever sad, you know.
All right, so this month on the Philosophy Corner, we are going to take a hard critical look at behavioral norms and ideals within the goth scene, and look at if hypocrisy exists under the surface. We're going to examine some subcultural ideals and how they affect our behavior. While I have venerated the goth subculture and do find it a wonderful, beautiful, creative group, I am going to try and take a hard critical look at some aspects of goth this time around for the sake of helping to build a better culture. So the entirety of this segment that I'm going to read is actually going to come from a book titled Goth, Identity, Style, and Subculture. And this is by my favorite goth sociologist, Paul Hodgkinson. And so basically I'm going to read a portion of his book, a small section of one of the chapters. And I have some questions prepared, so we'll pause periodically throughout the reading to discuss his opinions, his findings, and sort of talk about our own personal experiences. So initially, this might be a bit discombobulating, I suppose would be a word, simply because we're jumping into the middle of a chapter here. But we're going to stop about halfway through the first paragraph to talk about it and continue on from there. So this is going to start off saying, the danger of theoretical overemphasis on multiplicity and ephemerality is illustrated even more clearly, perhaps, by the connection between goths' translocal affiliation with one another and an equally strong sense of collective distinction from those whose appearance or lifestyle were deemed antithetical to those of the subculture. This usually involved a generalized conception of normal, quote, culture and, quote, the mainstream, or, quote, trendies. And trendies is a British term for, I don't know if it's technically considered a subculture, but it's sort of the people who dress in, what's trendy, I guess is where the name comes
from. So like preps or like hipsters?
Yeah,
here?
I guess, yeah, that would be an American,
that's
that
exactly
would be
what
a good,
came to mind when you said that.
So I'll go ahead and stop there. The first question I have is, do we overgeneralize, as goths, do we overgeneralize normal culture and sort of put them into a box to, that sort of cognitive, that way of thinking that I talked about earlier, to make it easier on us to identify them as one group the same way as they do for us?
I would say yes.
Yeah.
Like in my case, I think it's especially more common to do that when you're a, quote, baby bat or like an early goth. Like,
right.
You get the idea that, okay, I'm a goth now, so I'm only gonna associate with other goths, and it's kind of like a sort of awakening in your mind, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's all true, because you get the tendency to think, I've been misled and duped all along, and all these people in the mainstream have all been like lying to me, and they're all just horrible human beings. And I was guilty of thinking that in those early days. I think once you've been in the scene for a while and you start to mature, and your perspective starts to change, and you realize that not everybody who is a non-goth is going to look at you and be like, "Ooh, Satanist." A lot of them are, but there are plenty of people.
Hey, I have a boyfriend who does not dress like us at all, but he actually does like the music, so it's kind of the same shit.
Blasphemy.
But yeah, the point is, not everyone who's a non-goth is this judgmental, horrible person.
I would agree with you. I think there tends to be sort of a double standard there. We will sort of get into that as we go on here. So this continues. The importance of this sense of distinctiveness was demonstrated by the tendency for many goths to resort to such denigration of trendies in response to questioning concerning the characteristics of the goth scene itself, as with the following comment in response to the Whitby Festival questionnaire. So this is something that we will actually be reading throughout this section. In his research, he sent out, I don't know, about 200 questionnaires, I believe, if I remember correctly, to attendants of the Whitby Gothic Festival. And he uses their responses throughout to sort of describe his thesis as he goes along. So the question to this particular person was, in your own words, please explain what is the goth scene and what it is all about. And this was a female, and she said, being different to all the mindless, brain-dead clones that walk around small-town England.
Yeah, that's perfect.
That brings... Yeah, well, so that brings me to my second question then. Do we unfairly or hypocritically judge those in that culture?
Well,
and I think that...
Go ahead.
I
was just going to say, well, it's so easy to do the same thing that they're doing since they've done it to us. Like,
right.
Very consistently. So,
right.
It's easy to fall into their mindset of what we think of them. Because we're fucking surrounded by it, and
yeah, I agree, and I think that's sort of the hard thing to do is for anybody in any culture is to be able to take each human on a case-by-case basis, regardless of what may be the easy thing to identify or class them as. And the problem is that when you do that, a lot of times you're your perceptions of that person is going to be reinforced, or you're going to be hurt, or you're going to be unfairly judged, or something similar. You're gonna have bad experiences, and I think that's sort of part of the human experience and condition, is having to deal with the, it's a fact that it doesn't matter what group you're part of, what race you're part of, what sexual identity you have, that everyone is a person. Now, there are trends definitely between groups, and it's hard to say, I'm going to meet this person as I am, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, and I'm not going to make judgments about them, because that's pretty much what everybody does.
Of course.
So I think that's sort of a human problem, not really a class or subculture problem. I mean, for me, like, the thing and this is something that this is an area I'm really trying to grow in as a person. And for me, what I try to go back to is my work experience at McDonald's, ironically, where I would hear people say these things about black people, and they would say, they would have one or two bad experiences with a black person, and then they would project that stereotype onto the entire race. And to me, that was just always so wrong, and it was always so offensive. And then they would say these horrible things about black people as a whole. It didn't matter where you grew up. It didn't matter who you were. If you were black, you were this person that they identified black people with. So I really just try to keep that in the back of my mind, and then when I encounter people and I immediately think, that person looks like this, they're going to be a piece of shit, I try to catch myself and think, you know what, let's just try to be a human to them, and then if they hurt me and if they are awful to me, then let's try to think about maybe where that comes from. Like, what sort of upbringing has caused that? What sort of cultural influences have brought them to that point in their life where they feel the need to lash out at people that are different? And I don't know. It's something I've been struggling with and trying to grow with as a person. And I think it's if we could all do that, I think that we would be better as a whole. But
absolutely.
All right, so let me go on here. The practice of distinguishing one's own tastes from those of a perceived, quote, order in order to legitimize them is referred to by Pierre Bourdieu as part of his study of classification of cultural tastes. And this is a quote. He says, tastes which are manifested preferences are the practical affirmation of an inevitable difference. It is no accident that when they have to be justified, they are asserted purely negatively by the refusal of others' tastes. All tastes are perhaps first and foremost distastes. So to paraphrase that, basically he's saying that our preferences and our tastes in the things that we like come out of what we don't like. So then my question there would be, are goth preferences based off of being different from the mainstream? So that being, are the things that we're into based off of our distastes, or are they legitimately things that we identify as? Or is there a mixture?
I don't think that it's necessarily based off a distaste. I mean, if I say I like rock music,
mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean I like rock music because rap music sucks. It means, I just happen to like rock music. It has nothing to do with any other kind of music. And I think, as far as goth preferences being based on being different from the mainstream, I think it really depends on the individual person. I think there are almost every person has a different story on why they got into the goth lifestyle. Sometimes it was, simply because they hated the mainstream lifestyle. They hated their white picket fence culture around them. And, for others, it was something maybe more inward and internal, a way to means of self-expression.
Yeah, I mean, for me, even though now I do hate that sort of American culture, I didn't when I started getting into goth. I was just sort of, I don't know if I want to say dissatisfied, but there was something missing there. There was something I didn't identify with. And then when I discovered goth subculture and, the things that revolve around that, I did find something I identified with. So I agree with you. I think I think it depends on the person. All right, so it goes on. The specific importance of a single point of collective subcultural identity and distinction among goths, though, is particularly consistent with Sarah Thornton's account, inspired by Bourdieu, of the negative construction by British clubbers of a similar mainstream against which they defined and strengthened their own sense of identity. David, who is another sociologist, makes a similar point in the context of a study of a subculture based around industrial music, arguing that in order to be an insider, it is not enough to like that which the other members like. One must also dislike what the other members do not like. It is the exclusionary nature of such groups that reinforces cohesion among the members. And that will bring me to my next question. To that extent, is goth inherently exclusionary, even though some may claim it shouldn't be?
Well...
Exclusionary? Can you dumb that down for me?
Exclusionary meaning that it is... to be goth, there are some things that are just, you have to say, are not goth. That there are limits to what you can call goth, to what is required to be goth, that you can't... so if it was inclusionary, you could say, hey, you want to be goth? Yeah, sure, you can be goth. You don't like Bauhaus and you love My Little Pony? Who cares? You can be goth. Everybody can be goth. Exclusionary means that there's inherently some things that have to be defined as not goth.
Exactly. Okay. I think I went over this topic, and it's funny because I think you pulled one of my clips from one of my videos.
Yeah,
and it was the first one. I was like, wait, that voice is familiar. Oh shit, that's me. I think.
Oh my god! You know what? Okay, I made that bumper when we first started the show, which was over a year ago, and I completely forgot that I had you in there, and I couldn't hear the bumper, so I have no idea what I actually put of you in there. So now I'm completely embarrassed.
No, it was really cool. I was like, oh shit.
Okay, okay.
I think I was talking about this on one of my videos, and I said, you don't have to dress in all black and shit like that. And I don't know if this is related, but I mean, you don't have to like every single aspect of what goth is, I guess, to,
right.
Or, vice versa. So, I don't know if that really helped, but.
Well, it's kind of like, what I think we talked about this before, like, goth inherently has ground rules of, basically attributes or characteristics of the culture. Like, we wear black, we listen to, like, these types of music. We are into, like, these types of movies. And, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you cannot be into,
anything else. Yeah.
other types of music or movies or clothing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Excuse me. Like, so there's a difference between characteristics of a culture which are agreed on for the most part by its members, which distinguish the culture from just anything else. and, you know, such an exclusionary nature to where, like, you're not allowed to like other things.
Exactly.
But I mean, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I know somebody in particular, I'm not gonna name names, I love him to death, but he claims to be goth, yet I have yet to see any, he posts, videos on Facebook a lot, and I have yet to see an actual, branded goth band that he posts, and it's a lot of doom metal and whatever you want to call it, all those heavy metal bands that have like female vocalists in it, but they're darker than, I don't know, but
gothic metal, basically.
Yeah, like the shitty cheap shit. I don't know.
Okay.
So I don't like it, but whatever. So yeah, I think, like, you know, well, he dresses the part, but expressing it musically or creatively, it's just not there. So I question him, and I go, well, maybe he likes the label, but I don't see much of what we consider would be, you know, related to the goth subculture. So,
and I think that's okay. I mean, if you look at like Motionless in White, or somebody who sort of has sometimes a trad goth look, but is definitely not goth, I mean, I think it's okay to say that. But I don't know, do you think that to the extent that you need to like certain things, like the culture likes certain things, do you think it's also as important to dislike certain things?
Yes.
I would say no. Like, I really like grunge music, and I like new wave, and, you know, I don't think that makes me, you know, less of a goth, because I do.
Yeah,
because
I'm sorry.
I also love goth and industrial and, you know, all that other stuff, you know?
I think I would say yes and no.
Nice.
We've reached an impasse.
Everybody loses. Okay, let me have, in the interest of time, let me move on here. All right, it goes on to say, this emphasis is broadly consistent, of course, with Howard Becker's discussion some decades ago of the significance of a derision of squares for the strength of distinctive identity and indeed superiority of hipness held by jazz musicians. Squares, of course, being the old slang for someone who's not cool. The relationship between identity and difference in contemporary elective affiliations is also discussed in detail by theorists of more fluid, unstable forms of collective identity, as well as a general sense of importance of distinction, though what Thornton and Locklear's perspective point to is the primacy to some individuals of relatively one-dimensional us and them distinctions revolving around a single affiliation. I think that's certainly something I've seen in the goth scene. This can be contrasted with the emphasis on numerous cross-cutting and ever-changing systems of tastes and distastes, identifications and disidentifications, focused on by more postmodern-oriented approaches. Among goths, the strength of dissection from perceived outsiders was particularly intensive as a result of the prejudice and occasional violence goths were prone to receive in light of their unconventional appearance. Many interviewees keenly recounted experiences of such abuse or assault, as in this example from a Leeds-based interviewee. And this is a respondent from the survey, and this is a female. She says, me and a friend were walking past Berlin's, and these couple of lasses were like going, "Hey, you tarts, vampire bitches." You go in city pubs and all the lads are like, "What have you got that in your lip for? What else have you got?"
It is so hard to read fucking slang.
Yeah, that's British.
Well, if you got that in your lip there.
Yeah, I was considering doing a British accent, but I thought that might be offensive to literally everyone.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to all the British listeners.
But yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen...
Doctor Who rules.
I've definitely seen at festivals where women who have piercings or unconventional piercings, and dudes will come up and be like, "Oh, what else do you have pierced? So you got your vag pierced, whatever." Like, just completely inappropriate, offensive.
I remember a guy saw my black painted fingernails and asked me if I paint my toenails black too.
I would have been like, "Yep," and
yes. Do you want to suck on my toes?
Yeah.
Is that why you're asking? You sick fuck.
I kind of think he did.
God.
It goes on to say, the perception among goths that such incidents reflect the narrow-minded characteristics of a societal majority is illustrated by the way some interviewees use such experiences to justify their own dislike of trendies. And this is another response. She says, when you get treated like that, why should you respect someone else for their type of group? Similarly, Birmingham... Go ahead.
No, what?
Okay. Similarly, a Birmingham respondent regarded trendies with considerable caution as a result of past experiences of abuse, in spite of placing some of his friends within this category. And he says, I had a discussion with a trendy mate, and I said, well, how many times have you been at a bus stop and had a goth shouting abuse at you or starting a fight with you? It's happened to me with your lot. We're the ones that get trouble off of you. So that brings me to my next question, which actually I think we already covered. Have you had experiences of abuse from the mainstream, and has it affected your view of them?
Well, you were talking earlier about how, those people at McDonald's were saying those horrible things about black people. And I will admit that there have been times in the past, because the majority, of people who would insult me for the way I dressed were black people. And
me too. Yeah.
I admit there were times when, I thought to myself, just, why do all black people just hate the way that I dress? Yeah. And I have to catch myself and be like, okay, that's not every black person. I've had, black friends who are goths, and, not every black person and not every person is gonna discriminate against you, just because you're goth and they're not.
Yeah, one of the more memorable instances I had was with my then girlfriend and I went to the mall, and we had a group of 10 black kids follow us around for 30 minutes, just yelling at us about how weird we were. It was really traumatic. But yeah, I mean, it's easy on both ends, negative and positive. I used to when I was smoking, a lot of the cigarette shops I went to were run by Indian guys and ladies. And I had a lot of really positive feedback. Every time I interacted with an Indian person, they only had positive things to say about how I looked, how I dressed, my makeup and things like that. And I was like, oh man, I love Indian people. They're so cool. But, again, both ways, you're projecting your experiences, your, what's the word for not object? Your anecdotal experiences onto an entire culture. And I think, like I said before, I think that's something everybody's guilty of. All right, so this goes on and says, the way the receipt of such hostility strengthened goths' reciprocal dislike of a privileged homogeneous group of trendies has a clear resemblance to Albert Cohen's circle of increasing subcultural delinquency. For Cohen, a subcultural member earns contempt or aggression from society. They collectively come to devalue whose goodwill and respect are forfeit anyway. They come to devalue the goodwill and respect of those whose goodwill and respect are forfeit anyway. And the subculture comes to include hostile and contemptuous images of those groups whose enmity they have earned. The final part of the circular process is that the shared identity of subcultural insiders is thoroughly intensified by the process. The hostility of the outgroup, thus engendered or aggravated, may serve to protect the in-group from mixed feelings about its way of life. Although Cohen's account, like those of there's a lot of references to other sociologists, like those of Jock Young and Stan Cohen, may overestimate and oversimplify the importance of outside hostility to the construction of subcultural identities. A circular process along the lines of that described here certainly appears to have fed and intensified Goth's sense of us and them. And this is another quote from the survey. This is a guy, and he says, "The way I see it, all us Goths should be mates because we've all got the one common factor, and that's the trendies taking the piss out of us all." So that brings me to my next question. While it may be hard to be critical, have you seen these groups form and stew with hatred of outsiders? And I guess we sort of just talked about that, but for me, I've definitely seen people who, like, even the last time I went to the club by me, there was, I found it really easy for me. I'm not going to just blame other people, but for me and other goths that were there to sort of talk derogatorily about the normal people that had showed up, knowing absolutely nothing about them, why they were there, or what sort of things they were into, just knowing that they weren't dressed like a goth. It was really easy for us to classify, put them in a box, and discount them as a person. Really, to be honest. Just because they were at a goth club and wearing like a checkered shirt or polo shirt or a pair of jeans or something.
Yeah, we get a lot of hipsters at the post-punk night.
Yeah.
And, I think everyone gets along pretty well overall. But, there's always that tendency to, even if it's for just a split second, to be like, oh, that guy's not goth at all. What the fuck is he doing here?
But
and, for all we know, he could be totally into that kind of music. Just not, dressed like a goth.
Yeah.
They're always so drunk and just dancing all over people. Yeah. And it's like, what are you doing, dude? We just come in here to fucking dance, and you're, all up on us, and you need to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fucking trying to hit on us.
It's easy. I mean, it's easy. I see a lot of, you have a lot of, conservative Christian culture is just a bunch of piece of shit people. And then, you get a lot of that where, any culture, I just bring that up specifically for me because being someone who is a Christian, and also hates conservative Christian culture, and then seeing people judge Christians as a whole for being assholes, it's just, any culture, you're going to have a group of people that are just worthless husks of flesh. And it's so
and those
easy.
are the ones that always get the most attention from the out groups.
Yeah, it's
sadly.
so easy to just project that onto everybody, man, because they make you so fucking angry. However, it was clear that the Goths' dislike of the mainstream also tended to reflect a positive and necessary enjoyment on their part of feeling collectively different, and more specifically superior to outsiders. Not surprisingly, perhaps, when it was put to interviewees that the sense of subcultural identity they so cherished was often reliant upon a rather elitist differentiation of themselves from outsiders. The instant reaction was often to disagree. The following response was typical, and this is from a female. She says, "I think it's not what you are not into, it's what you are into. It's what goth is." Turn the page here. The questionable accuracy of the first part of this sentiment, though, was indicated when respondents were asked how they would feel if goth music and style were prominent in the mass media and highly popular throughout society. In response, the same interviewee articulated the link between shared identity and collective distinction extremely honestly and clearly. She says, if every single person in the UK was a goth, then a lot of goths wouldn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd still be one, but I wouldn't like everyone else being one. Another person says, I wouldn't like it. And Phil says, why? And she says, it's not like you are goth because you want to stand out, but you do like sort of being different from everyone else. Although when you're with a load of goths, you blend in, but you're all different, if you know what I mean, from everyone else. So let me pose that question to you guys. If, let's say, the dominant culture or a large portion of the culture in America happen to be goth or be into those sort of aesthetics and things, would you still be goth? Would you take the other route and say, I'm not going to be into that because that's the predominant culture?
Definitely not.
I think there would be even more intense splintering of the culture than there is now. I mean, you'd have a war between, like, the casual goths and the hardcore goths. You know, you'd have your hardcore goths being like, oh, the majority of people are just, like, fake goths. They think they're into it, but they don't know what they're talking about. So it would be kind of another just big culture war, really no different than it is now, between like goths and, say, hipsters or, non-goth cultures.
I wouldn't change just because this is how I am, and I couldn't care less what anybody else does with their lives. This is how I am. This is what I like. This is my lifestyle. I mean, I'm not gonna try to steer clear of everybody else's decisions. It just doesn't make any sense. So I would definitely not change just because people are coming to my side. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I agree with you. Yep. As well as re-emphasizing the somewhat one-dimensional sense of identity and distinction held by many, the way in which goths so frequently position themselves against those they perceived as trendies is significant in that it implies that they also shared a set of moral assumptions about their lifestyle, which allowed many of them to understand it as culturally superior. These I shall refer to as the ideals of the subculture. So now we will go ahead and talk about subcultural ideals. He presents two of them, and we can see if we agree or disagree with them. So he goes on to say, importantly, unlike so-called new social movements, the goth scene involved no external political objectives. Rather, its ideals concerned the character and survival of the group, and the basis of its cultural superiority over other sections of society. As has been indicated by Sarah Thornton, a sociologist in 1995, as well as sometimes being expressed openly, the self-perceptions of subcultural participants can often be revealed by the ways in which they negatively characterize outsiders. In the case of the goth scene, a careful analysis of what goths said their group stood for and against revealed the central importance of two themes, individuality and commitment. And those are the two ideals. The most common basis on which goths distinguished themselves from trendies was a perception that the latter mindlessly followed mass media fashions in dress and music rather than exercising individual discrimination of taste. This is a quote from a male respondent. He says, "They have no defined style," that they being trendies. "Their style is to go with what is selling in the shops rather than sifting through people just go with what's in Top Man currently, or stuff like that. I guess Top Man is a British thing. Due to their supposed indiscrimination adherence to passing commercial fads, trendies were perceived as a homogeneous group, something which goths usually contrasted with the relative diversity of their own subculture. And here's a quote from a respondent. He says, "If you look at a group of goths, there are similarities, but there's a lot more differences than if you had a group of normal people."
I definitely agree. Of course, more aesthetically, if you're going to look at us and, like, put us side by side.
Right.
Aesthetically,
I think so, yeah.
Every one of us has something about them that's it could be a tiny difference, but it's still a difference. I mean,
yeah.
Of course, in there, if you're going to look at the, trendies or whatever you want to call them, of course they're different too, but our community is way smaller than that, so it's easier to pick out who's different see the differences easier.
All right, let's see. As we have already seen, goths, consistent with the subcultural interviewees of those two other sociologists, tended to perceive that their subculture encapsulated diversity, creativity, and individuality. This can be illustrated by another Whitby Festival questionnaire response. This is a quote. The question is, in your own words, please explain what the goth scene is all about. And then the response was complete freedom of expression and diversity. In particular, it was often stated by interviewees that the goth scene entailed an open-minded environment which encouraged people to do their own thing, free from the kinds of social pressure to conform which characterized mainstream society. As one Plymouth-based interviewee succinctly put it, quote, "There's no peer pressure within goth."
Wrong.
Yeah.
So that's my next question. Do you feel the ideal of the culture... First of all, do you feel an ideal of the culture is individuality? And then do you agree that there is no peer pressure within goth?
Yes and no.
I think that's just kind of like a thing that goth people always say, like, oh, it's about, being completely free without rules, and but there are rules in the subculture. That's what makes it a subculture.
Yeah.
If a person just decided to show up, since, goth is all about free expression, if somebody decided to show up in like a frilly pink thong to a goth club.
Yeah.
And
which
are we
happens
supposed
at
to
the
believe...
industrial cybergoth ones.
I'm
well,
sure,
yeah, but that's a totally different, would we expect to believe that like nobody would bat an eye or like look at that person and be like, what the hell are they thinking?
Yeah.
So there are rules, and, I think the whole free expression, I think when they say that, what they mean is it's only free expression compared to when comparing themselves to the mainstream culture, within the scope of what they're into, and it being like opposed to what the mainstream is into. It isn't like a universal, you're just free to express yourself however you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's more of just like comparing the individual goth's taste to, say, the average Joe on the street's taste. And it is, so it's not totally free expression, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Makes complete sense.
Let me go ahead and move on here. In addition, the goth scene was often perceived as being characterized by open-mindedness and tolerance in respect of social characteristics such as gender, race, and sexuality, in contrast to perceptions of trendies, who, as well as often being regarded as violent, tended to be associated with prejudice. And this is a quote from a female. She says, "I've never met a goth that's been sexist or homophobic or anything. All the trendies I've met seem to have something like that. Like they don't like black people or gay people or something. But every goth is very open-minded because they've been taken the piss out of, and they don't know what it feels like. And they know what it feels like.
I disagree. I think that there's not as much, and we talked about this in earlier episodes. Yeah. There's not as much racism and homophobia in the goth scene, not nearly as much as mainstream, but it's still there. I mean, people are people and people are flawed.
Yeah, I agree. So he goes on to say, as well as a disapproval of the sheepishness, narrow-mindedness, and intolerance to difference of those taken in by dominant music and fashion trends. There was among goths a specific dislike of the commercialism associated with trendy clothes and music. In a familiar viewpoint associated with rock music, generally, the involvement of... turn the page... commercial motives was deemed to clash with the ideal of authentic individual expression. Thus, many bands, promoters, record labels, and other small businesses connected with the goth scene were keen to emphasize their artistic motivations and to make it clear that money was a marginal consideration. The vocalist of American goth band Faith in the Muse perceived a direct contradiction between the two. She says, I recently had a talk with another singer who just wants to, quote, make it in the business, which is not a smart thing to do unless you have no soul. There are numerous successful artists out there who have made their name on, quote, bubblegum music, that which has no real substance or meaning. And so this is sort of something we talked about earlier in one of the articles, but that's the next question. Is there a balance to be struck between integrity and also trying to make a living?
Well, that kind of depends on, I think, the individual person and where they draw the line. I mean, personally, I think that all art should come without a price tag. And that goes for all music, all, visual arts, everything. But I obviously, that mindset can't exist in a capitalist economy. So,
Right.
So yeah, I mean, you do have to draw a line somewhere and find the right balance, between, keeping your integrity and, versus, quote, selling out. I mean,
so we've learned that Mark is a communist pig. Okay, let's go ahead and move on.
Damn straight, comrades.
All right, so in contrast to notions of the mainstream as dominated by commercial interests and a mass, narrow-minded culture, then, goths tended to regard their own subculture as encapsulating authentic artistic expression by musicians, and the exercise of equally instinctive discriminating tastes in music and clothing, and by a diverse and open-minded set of individual fans. Yeah, I think that's true. All right, the second subcultural ideal fairly consistently alluded to by goths was commitment. Whether in terms of the intensity or longevity of individual participation, depth of knowledge and understanding, or even involvement in production and organizational activities, goths tended to regard themselves as strongly committed to their preferred lifestyles, styles of music and fashion, and the lifestyle with which it was connected. Conversely, as well as being deemed to lack individuality, trendies and the kinds of music and fashion with which they associated were often derided as fickle and superficial. Furthermore, those who regarded themselves as goths but were deemed not to be taking part in the subculture with sufficient conviction were in danger of being labeled as part-timers. So that's the next question here. Is commitment a subcultural ideal?
I don't think it's necessary. I mean, as long as they're living their own life. I mean, do you have to be a part of something to be to be under that, category? I mean, am I understanding this correctly?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's what were the three categories? Whether in terms of the intensity or longevity of individual participation, depth of knowledge or understanding, so the knowing what goth songs those quotes were from earlier that we read, or even involvement in production and organizational activities, like I guess this podcast.
I mean, I guess if you want to be known, you could, go do your own thing with whatever you just said. Sorry, it's like so late. Production and stuff like that, but as far as like knowledge and stuff, I think there should be a substantial amount. If you were asked certain questions about the subculture, I think it's definitely an important thing to have.
Yeah.
We often joke about goth points. And like,
God,
hey, I'm a DJ, and I co-host a goth podcast, so I get like 10 million goth points.
Yeah.
Oh man,
I think it's more of just a joke. I don't think that goth points necessarily exist. You don't have to be involved in all these different things to be a goth. I think it's good, like you said, to have a baseline knowledge of, so someone asks you what's your favorite Cure song, or you won't be like, who's the Cure?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, yes. See,
but it's not necessary. I don't think it's good to have a baseline knowledge. Not entirely necessary. I don't think.
See, well, I agree with you. I mean, I think you can be goth and doing your own thing and not involved. But I think if you want to be recognized by the goth culture as a whole as being goth, I think commitment to the subculture does matter. I mean, just the small amount of time that I've had being involved in the local goth scene here, people who show up to clubs every weekend, or who go to parties at people's houses, or who know certain people in different bands, just simply because they are involved, because they're dedicated, because they have the time to do that kind of thing, are immediately revered as, well, this person is obviously goth and they're important in the scene. I think it kind of sucks because, if you're working a full-time job and you have 2 kids and, you have all these other responsibilities that come with, certain positions in your life, you don't have that kind of time.
Yeah, I experienced this.
You can't,
Go ahead, what?
Go ahead. No, I mean, I was just going to say, you can't show that kind of dedication and commitment just because you have children to keep alive, you have a job to keep, you have, other things that are concern your well-being that aren't goth related. And I don't think that makes you not a goth, but I think in the scene, you're, not having that dedication and that time sort of makes you less recognized as a goth, at least immediately.
But that can apply to like any subculture, or just really anything in general. If you're doing stuff to get yourself noticed in any fashion, or not necessarily to get yourself noticed, but like doing stuff for a cause, any cause, it will just by default lead to you getting noticed by more people. Especially if you're putting yourself on a platform somewhere and, making a noise.
Yeah. All right. We'll go on here. In the following example of a Birmingham interviewee, he describes his dislike during the 1980s of those deemed only to take part in the goth scene for individual nights out or, for individual nights out and hence to lack a permanent subcultural appearance. And here's what he says. There were the stiffs that weren't there, that used to come down to the clubs. Stiffs had daytime jobs and had, say, just short hair, and they spiked it for the weekend, who thought they were really cool. They were being really different, but to us they were just part-timers because we were doing it full on. Although not engaged in by all goths, such derision of part-timers seemed just as prominent among contemporary participants as a whole. In the next example, the age of participants and their lack of stylistic extremity or in-depth subcultural knowledge are taken as evidence of insufficient commitment. Notably, the display of interest in a commercially successful and externally well-known band and of what is deemed a temporary or superficial subcultural appearance are taken to suggest that the individuals concerned have only scratched the surface of the subculture. So this is pretty funny, but the first female says, yeah, like the baby goths. I think that's probably Marilyn Manson's fault. The second female says, it's like when you go to Edwards, which is a goth club in the UK, and there's all these 15-year-olds jumping about in their Marilyn Manson t-shirts. And then a third person says they've got short hair and they've just got a little bit of eyeliner, a little bit of lipstick, and they think, quote, oh, I'm a goth. So, that having been said, the next question here, do you think baby bats feel threatened? Do you think do you feel that baby bats are threatening to you as a more dedicated, knowledgeable member of goth?
Absolutely not. I see baby bats as an opportunity to, I don't see them as like, well, they're just partial goths, or they're just like, they're casual goths, or they're not really into it. I see it as like, they're curious in it. So why not expose them to, good music like Susie? That's kind of that's why I did my radio show to begin with, because, I wanted to reach out to, maybe people who were, into ICP or stuff at the time and be like, hey, if you like, that kind of look, maybe give the goth music a try, give industrial music a try, So I don't see any kind of I don't have any kind of like negative view of baby bats, and I don't think any goth should have a negative view of baby bats, because they could potentially be the future of the scene.
Yeah.
Well said, Mark.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't think I can add to that. Yeah, you're right. I agree. All right, let me go on here. As indicated already, the distinction drawn by goths between themselves as committed and individual and the mainstream as commercial, shallow, and homogeneous was shared with many other music-related amalgams. In addition, many of the elements which make up the ideals can be traced to a general emphasis on artistic authenticity that goes far beyond contemporary popular music or fashion. Notably, it resides in the way proponents of legitimate, discerning Borghese culture distinguish themselves from the vulgar tastes of mass society, as described in Bourdieu's work. In the case of the goth scene, while the degree of consistency of the ideals described from one goth to the next and one place to the next was significant in itself as a subcultural trait, it does not take a great deal of analysis to discern fairly clear flaws in some of their assumptions, particularly in respect of the notion of individuality. Most importantly, it is clear that this ideal does not sit comfortably with that of subcultural commitment. On the one hand, many goths understood their subculture as superior to the mainstream on the basis of its encouragement of diversity, creativity, and self-expression, while on the other hand, They valued and deemed as membership criteria significant devotion to something in particular. Of course, if commitment to the ideal of being individual in its general sense would have sufficed, then there would be no contradiction. However, having examined the denigrations of part-timers and trendies by Goths, I find it clear that in practice, commitment was nearly always justified against a rather more distinctive set of criteria, including specific hairstyles, clothing, makeup, and exhibited music tastes, as well as general factors such as frequency of participation and contribution to the well-being of the subculture. Then, gaining inclusion and respect required that individuals demonstrate commitment and in-depth understanding of the specific range of tastes and norms which made the subculture distinctive. As we have seen in Chapter 3, it was important to demonstrate a degree of individual innovation, but only in the context of a general display of commitment to the range of tastes which symbolized the goth scene. Without wanting to diminish the significance of individuals developing their own version of the goth style, it is clear that what was substantively individual was less the behavior and appearance of one goth compared to another than the overall range of collective stylistic criteria which they shared. It was these specific shared tastes that usually formed the basis of distinctions and judgments drawn by goths between insiders, outsiders, and part-timers. So
that's what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. Do you see a conflict between the two? I mean, one of the questions I have here is, does this put to rest the goth is what you make it argument?
Well,
meaning that there are still, even though we are individuals, there are still criteria by which we are judged against.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, I think just, what we were saying earlier, I think he really drives that point home. You can't necessarily be an individual. You're only, the way I see it, you're only an individual when you compare yourself to mainstream culture. Because, if you're a goth in a big crowd of non-goth people, then yeah, I'd say you're an individual, in that context. But, if you're at a goth club surrounded by a bunch of other goths, I would
not so much.
Not so much, So there are ground rules and there are norms, really no different than norms in a mainstream culture, but there are customs and norms that, are kind of generally agreed upon by the entire culture.
Yeah.
I definitely agree. I had a video that I think I never really mentioned, but I might have, saying that you could dress really however you want and still have the mindset or still have the interest in the subculture, and I mean, not dress however you want all the time, but not have, if you wouldn't have the fucking time every single day to get all dressed up and, all dark and shit, you really have nothing else to do but to dress in clothing that doesn't represent the goth subculture. So, there has to be some sort of dedication and,
in something, yeah.
Exactly.
All right, a couple pages left here. So Gother Than Thou syndrome is the final section. The styles described in Chapter 3, then, were not merely symbolic of subcultural identity, important though it was, they also functioned as a shared and translocally consistent system of classification whereby goths collectively distinguished themselves from outsiders and by extension created hierarchies of status among themselves. Sarah Thornton, a sociologist, has theorized such classifications and distinctions among subcultural participants through further adaptation of the writings of Bourdieu, who keeps coming up. She adapts for discussion of the specific classificatory systems of subcultures the term cultural capital, which essentially refers to knowledges, cultural goods, and modes of behavior which bestow social and social advantages on individuals in relation to dominant systems of taste. And subcultural capital is something we have talked about before on the show. Let's see here. Therefore, subcultural capital should be taken to involve the degree of status-inducing properties one holds in relation to particular tastes or values of a given subcultural grouping. Thornton provides examples from club culture to illustrate the adaptation of the term. Quote, just as books and paintings display cultural capital in the family home, so subcultural capital is objectified in the form of fashionable haircuts and well-assembled record collections.
Wow.
Or MP3s for modern-day people.
So, all that to say, I mean, subcultural capital basically is, the people are ranked on, in Goth specifically, people are ranked on certain classifications, I guess, certain criteria. You have, the more criteria you fulfill, the higher ranked you are, because the more subcultural capital you have. If you have the largest record collection and you have the largest knowledge of Goth history
and the largest Liberty spikes.
Yeah, you have the coolest hair, the more and more that you have, the higher up the ranks you are. So my question here for your, from your experience, people sort of get cranky about acknowledging a hierarchy within the Goth subculture. But do you think there is one, and have you seen it?
I guess, like, when you go to clubs, maybe the DJs or the, the people playing the music, which are, essentially usually the same people who are running the events. Mm-hmm. I think maybe they can be seen as, like, on a higher level, but I don't think that's necessarily, like, it's kind of more, I don't know what to say. It's not
subtle.
Yeah, it's more subtle. It's a more subtle hierarchy. It's not necessarily like, oh, he's the DJ. Oh, let's hope he plays something I like. It's not like a worshipful, adoration. It's more of just like, there's a recognition that the DJs are not like all the other club goers, but it's not necessarily like they're better than us. It's just that, they're on a different level and that they are the ones in control of the music.
And that's all it is. I mean, at the club. You know what I mean? I mean, they play good music, and they're the only ones that could get recognition because it's like, that's their show, you know what I mean? So,
let's see here. The recognition that subcultural participation tended to classify and judge. The recognition that subcultural participants tended to classify and judge others by means of a conscious and mutually agreed set of standards is what makes this pluralization of cultural capital useful to our discussion of the Goth scene here. It fits with our emphasis on the way that classificatory practices of Goths somewhat undermine the credibility of their verbal espousals of individuality and open-mindedness and the freedom of expression. So here's my next question. Can we have our cake and eat it too? Can you... What did I say? You can't be a complete individual and classify and hold standards of Goth. We have to accept that Goth is exclusionary to an extent, and that's okay and also good for the scene. So, I mean, I guess just to say, there are limits to the to how much of an individual you can be, because you're still working within the framework of what it is to be goth.
I was just gonna say there's limits to being an individual anywhere in any culture. So it's basically a matter of like determining how much freedom of expression within the given confines you feel most comfortable in, be it the goth scene or the punk scene, whichever set of rules most, I guess, fit with you as a person and with your personality and what you're into. But, you're never truly an individual because, in any society, in any culture, there are always rules. Unless, maybe you're out in the jungle somewhere and, surrounded by animal friends. Because they don't give a fuck.
Animal friends.
But if you're in a civilized society, there are always going to be some kind of rules.
All right, well, let me finish up. I think there's a couple paragraphs left. The term subcultural capital is particularly useful, though, since as well as referring to levels of status at the level of perception and consciousness, it allows us to capture the particular rewards liable to be afforded to those who achieve it and lack of social opportunities for those who do not. We shall begin to see in Chapter 5 that in the case of the goth scene, such rewards most obviously took the form of attention, friendships, and romantic opportunities. And then this leads to my final question. Have you experienced things like that where if you're sort of viewed as uber goth or goth enough that you get that attention from other goths, or you get those opportunities that maybe other people don't?
I don't really get that kind of attention, I guess. Like I said, I lived in LA, which in most people feel entitled. So if any attention I got at first wasn't much. I wasn't acknowledged much. I was just some chick that had moved back from Oxnard back to Compton. So I mean, went to the club out in Long Beach, Release the Bats, the one. What was that?
So did you then feel you were left out because you didn't look goth enough, or was it just that you were you didn't know anybody and you were just kind of
exactly new? The latter. I didn't know anybody. Okay. I went up to one of my friends and now friend, and said, "Hey, I fucking love your makeup," and I'm very outgoing though, so if I like something, I will definitely come up to you and tell you, so
yeah.
And then she was nice to me and at first and stuff like that. Not saying she's not nice now, of course, she's one of my good friends, but she was nice to me, and I felt a little more comfortable with these people. I had no idea who they were, so.
Well, for me, I'm not an outgoing person at all. I rarely speak at all. I certainly love to spout off my opinions on this show, ad nauseum. But, when I go to the clubs, especially considering that I live 2 hours away from my nearest goth club that I go to every month. So I don't I'm not a local, people don't really know me. And I don't think there's I don't think they know, maybe by now some of them have heard of this show, but they don't know me as being the co-host of this show. I don't think they know about any of the music, the DJing that I've done. So it's not really in my case, doing all this, goth point stuff, it's not an indicator, of, popularity or anything like that, because I'm just another dude. And, I think, in any culture, how popular you become depends on like your social skills and how good you can communicate with people. And admittedly, I'm not really a social person, so I'm usually just like kind of sitting there, either like dancing to the music or like smoking a cigarette outside the club. But I think, although there was a time like several years ago when a guy told me that he had listened to my radio show back when I was doing it on the radio, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I do this stuff because I like it. It's not, I don't do it to get goth points or to get popular or anything. I do it because I think it's fascinating and I love the music and I like the look and stuff like that. So I don't.
Damn it, Mark! I really want to go clubbing with you now.
Aww.
Both of you.
I know. I wish I could meet you guys in real life.
All right. Well, let me just close up here. There's like a couple closing paragraphs. So he goes on. He reiterates some stuff about subcultural capital, the differentiation between in-groups and out-groups and weekenders. And then he says, while few were keen to acknowledge that they engaged in it themselves, many respondents complained about the judgmental side of the goth scene and the resulting competitiveness among insiders, which was commonly known as gother-than-thou syndrome. The following exchange summed this up splendidly. Female number 1. I think some goths get off on that. They have to be the weirdest, the most mysterious, the most facial piercings. Number 2, female number 2, she says, those are the pretentious people that stand there and say, I'm more gothier than you are. My clothes are better than yours. And then number 1 says, those are the people that sleep in coffins on a night, and not only do they do it, but they tell everyone that they do it.
Oh, man.
So the author says, of course, what this exchange does not recognize is that while it may have varied in extent, such competitiveness alongside the continual tendency to classify and judge others was actually engaged in by most, if not all, goths. As the following respondent explains, newcomers to the goth scene tended to be particularly aware of the hierarchies it created and their own position at the bottom thereof. Again, the importance of having the right appearance as primary exhibitor of subcultural capital is clear. And here's the quote. You know what you're like when you're wearing your first pair of black jeans and a black shirt and short hair, and you're just in awe of everyone, and you feel ever so humble buying your first pair of boots, and you feel like you shouldn't because you're not worthy of that sort of thing. Laughter, in quotes. There were all these glowering, towering, pale, forlorn-looking Gothic type people, and you're just like some 17-year-old with a Sisters of Mercy t-shirt. I'm wearing a Sisters of Mercy t-shirt right now. What's wrong with that?
I'm wearing a Peter Murphy shirt.
I'm wearing a fucking totally black shirt.
Now I'm completely naked.
Jeez.
Gaining and maintaining subcultural capital and the social rewards it entailed then was a key concern and motivation for most goths. When it offered the prospect of such rewards, the system of classification we have been describing induced considerable encouragement for individuals to collect, learn, and exhibit examples of established subcultural style and behavior. While effective innovations sometimes resulted in particularly high social rewards and over-predictable imitations were often... Overtly predictable, I think is what he meant. And overtly predictable imitations were often frowned upon. The bread and butter of subcultural capital usually revolved around one's overall commitment to existing shared systems of taste. All right. Really starting to lose it towards the end there. So
It's
words, wordy words.
So many fucking words. All right, so my conclusion I have here, I said, while hierarchies, ideals, and judgments can be hurtful, they are also what keep goth a culture. We must strike a balance between pretentious asshattery and protection of what goth is, so that it remains meaningful and sticks around for another 30 years. We must also be aware of hypocrisy when it comes to outside groups. We have all been hurt by prejudice and discrimination. It is noble to strive to be open towards other groups and give them a chance at our time and friendship. As we are so keen to acknowledge death, let us acknowledge it is the great equalizer. We are all human. We can all learn from each other. We all have strengths and weaknesses.
I was just going to say, well, first of all, that's a really good topic. It covered a lot of shit.
Yeah. I didn't realize how much we covered because we're far past with the amount of time I thought we would be.
I agree with most things that were said. Of course, I can't recall them all now, but I feel as you were reading some of that, I had a video claiming that, goths don't judge much, and it's apparent that they do, just as well as other people, I guess I'd want to call them. And it's just, like Mark said earlier, we're all fucking human beings. That's gonna happen. Yeah. I totally agree. So, and like I said earlier, I don't really get the opportunity to talk about stuff like this. So, I mostly absorb it all to try to, reflect after, and it's not really working.
Yeah, it's a lot. Like, it's for me, it's really been an experience going from, just sort of consuming participant of the culture to really studying the academic side of where behaviors come from, what their trends are, why they happen. It's really and none of us have a degree in any sort of field related to that, so it's really just personal experience,
spouting opinions. That's what we do.
Nothing that actually matters at all. Of course, but yeah, it's definitely something that's very interesting to think about and ponder.
Yeah, and my friends out in LA and here, I don't know anybody other than you two at the moment that actually take the time to talk about this kind of stuff. So it's really, it's refreshing to listen and kind of change perspective on a lot of shit. So.
Yeah, I think it's important. When I think, I've heard people describe certain people at goth clubs as being basically the same as the vapid club kids, except dressed in black. And I think when you have a portion of goth culture that is no different than the regular club culture that just sort of goes with whatever's happening and just wants to party, except they're dressed in a different style of clothing and listen to a different style of music, I think that's a problem. Yeah,
and of course you don't go to a club to have a conversation, like a deep conversation. So of course, but that's really the only time I see them, other than a barbecue or two here and there. But
right.
And even then, they're fucking playing music with a DJ. So
yeah,
that's why
Yep.
I can't stress enough that I really appreciate you bringing me on the show, and this is just really cool to hear all this information. And I just feel like I'm not clear in what I'm saying, and I feel like I don't know what I'm saying, and you guys probably think otherwise, but I wouldn't even blame you if you didn't. So,
well, no, I think you were great. I don't think any of us know what we're talking about. I think that's why why we need people that are
we can only relate
and psychologists and stuff.
Yeah, we can only relate our personal experiences.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah, I mean it actually that's funny what you brought up about the barbecues, because when I go to a club, I'm just thinking, if I'm dancing and stuff and enjoying the music, sure, that's great. But half the time I'm thinking, man, these people are really cool. I would sure love to hang out with them somewhere. I can actually talk to them.
Exactly.
And then you go to like somebody's house party with a bunch of the same people, and you're thinking, oh great, I can hang out with these people. And then it's just somebody playing music just as loud as a club on their stereo. And you're like, okay, well, great. I guess I'll just get drunk and do the same thing I do at the club. Exactly. But yeah, so yes, Samantha, thank you so much for coming on. I know we are far over the 3-hour time limit I told you. But thank you so much for hanging out with us and telling us your experiences. It was a lot of fun to talk with you.
Of course.
Even though you beat me at that game, I will have my revenge.
Let's try it out again. We'll see.
We'll try it again.
Well, thanks guys for having me, and it was this was fucking awesome. I was looking forward to it all week, so.
All right, so thank you again, Samantha, so much for coming on the show. We're going to go ahead and close it out with our Sinister Suggestions and some listener feedback.
So you've got to be interested in death. It's the last great taboo. It's the only taboo left.
Precisely. I mean, why is it, do you think, that everyone in here is dressed in black? It's a celebration of death.
No, I just like the clothes.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, the clothes look good. Yeah, I mean, death looks good. Charles Manson, yeah? No, he was cool.
Don't know if I mentioned it before, but I'm actually a vampire.
Sinister Suggestions.
All right, so my sinister suggestion for this month is actually going to be a TV show. And I am suggesting you all check out a show called Constantine. Now, you may be either familiar with the comic, the DC comic, or you may be familiar with the movie that had
Keanu Reeves.
Keanu Reeves. I was going to say Neo, but Keanu Reeves, who played the protagonist Constantine. There is a TV show that I don't remember what network exactly it was out on, but I've been watching it on Hulu myself. I believe you can stream it on the network's website. You can get it on the full season 1 is on Hulu Plus. I'm not sure about Hulu free version. But I would like to suggest this show because well, I guess for many reasons. I mean, on one level, I like the show because I'm a fan of the comic. And I'm a fan of superhero TV shows and movies. But from a purely goth perspective, this is certainly the most goth of any superhero TV show or movie, because you have the protagonist who is a black magician, essentially, and he sort of dabbles in every different type of real and imaginary magic. So you'll have scenes with him performing voodoo or different or scrawling different ritualistic symbols from different religions and different occult practices, and then you'll have him talking about fictional stuff. Like he'll have cool things he can pull out of his bag, like Achilles heel, which is like this long rope thing that can grab stuff and doesn't let go. But also on top of that, it's a very, very dark show. It deals with hell. It deals with demons. It deals with human, like the evil side of human nature. It has a lot of horror elements. There's a lot of, especially for, I think it's like NBC, but especially for network TV, there's a lot of, pretty close to gore type of stuff that they get away with. I think at one point he has an acid trip with some like voodoo magician, and the guy pulls his eyeball out of its socket and then puts it into Constantine's eye, which was pretty graphic. All kinds of one of the characters has like 37 lives that he can live, so he dies pretty graphically in a bunch of different ways. There's all kinds of really, really dark material that they deal with. And personally, I really like the show because, a lot of superhero movies and TV shows are pretty superficial in what they deal with. It's very cut and dry. But Constantine really looks at the human condition and human issues, and like really goes in depth with sort of psychological and sociological concepts and issues, and deals with pain and suffering, and deals with heartache, and deals with discrimination and hatred and that dark side of human nature. And the characters are complex, especially Constantine. He's very gray. Sometimes he's evil, sometimes he's good, sometimes he's selfish, sometimes he's relatable in that he's a person and he's not an archetype. And I really, really like that. So I am recommending Constantine, the TV show. Okay, so we had a couple messages this month. The first one I'm going to mention is from Magda, from a listener from Romania, actually. And she wrote in saying that so first of all, she's a photographer and a model and a blogger. She has a small alternative online shop, which is called Eternium Style. That's ETERNIUM Style. You can go ahead and look that up. So she says, in my country, the Gothic movement doesn't really, move. Smiley face. So I always try to follow fellow Goths from other countries online. It's interesting to see how the social and cultural background doesn't influence very much of the Goth subculture. So she wanted to congratulate us on our podcast and hope more Goths from all over the world listen to the show. And to say that she shared the page with her friends from Romania. So thank you. I know I spoke with you on Messenger, but I want to really thank you again so much for enjoying the show, for sharing it especially. And yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, I think we mentioned earlier about how it's really beautiful and astonishing that the Goth subculture is so identifiable and relatable and attractive to people from so many really completely different walks of life and completely different cultures. And
yeah, I love hearing like the stories of like goths and goth clubs and events from all around the world, because in some ways they're different just because of the cultural differences, but like you said, there's something that transcends like every country.
Yeah, so thank you so much for the email. We'll go ahead and mention the next email. This is from Alicia. She says, hello, Count and Company. I've been wanting to email you for a while now. Apologies if this email is long and rambling. I have a lot of thoughts on things banging around. So she says, first off, I have a relevant tale to tell on the subject of graveyard cemetery arrests. I live in New England, Massachusetts, more specifically, and we have a lot of very old places where dead people lay. Some of them are very famous and important people. There are quite a few that are patrolled. I have one story I was not there for but can comment on. I was at a goth night in Providence, Rhode Island. I don't know if you know this, but H.P. Lovecraft's house and gravesite are both located there. I actually do know that.
I don't.
I know that from a video game, actually, which is pretty funny.
Awesome.
At the night, I met and talked with members of a local band called the Dirge Carolers. Great name. They gave me a copy of their CD, which they had shot the art for at a cemetery where Mr. Lovecraft is buried. As they were leaving after that photo shoot, a van pulled up with a security person in it. He saw the way they were dressed and saw they had a camera. He told them that they couldn't be there and they had to delete whatever photos they had taken. He took the camera and looked through it. He didn't see any cemetery photos, though, and let them go. One of the members of the band had quickly taken the SD card from the camera and put it in their sleeve, saving the shots. Good thinking there.
That is awesome.
So the next thing I wanted to talk about is the club scene. Based off of what I have heard and what little research I've done through Google, is the New England club scene is very different from other places. I tried to start a night at one point and was disappointed when it failed, which was due to an issue with the venue. But it seems compared to other parts of the country, New England is saturated with different nights. Part of it is because we have a smaller state than other places, and it makes it easier to go to nights in other states. I go to Res up in New Hampshire, Plague the next night in Maine, which was mentioned once in the story. She was excited about. Then head down to Boston for any number of other nights. The other big difference, it seems, from what I've looked up, is our nights are more theme heavy. So I'm assuming that means you have Gothic prom every other weekend.
Dark 80s night.
Yeah.
Singles night.
Almost every night has a music and or clothing theme for any little holiday or whim. The night I go to most regularly has 18-year-olds who don't really know if they are goth or not yet, to people in their 40s and 50s who can tell tales of the origin of goth and will gladly hold your hand and give you advice. I want to share a site a DJ friend of mine runs. It shows all the nights in our area and schedules, and feel free to share it with your listeners. Maybe there's some poor goth out there who is lonely and doesn't realize they are a short drive away from from some like-minded friends. And that's seeddarkly.net. And then she says, also, if you guys ever find yourselves in New England, I would gladly pay your way into one of those nights. So that's lovely.
Let's do it.
Speaking of clubbing, since I love it so much, I started keeping a blog of my outfits and some of my experiences. And she says we don't have to share it, but I would like to. And this is at shoestringgoth.blogspot.com. So you guys can go ahead and check that out. And then she says, again, thank you very much for your show. And then she signs off and says she's 27, so we're around the same age. Yay, generation of goths. Our generation of goths are growing up. So thank you, Alicia, very much for your message. Thank you very much for your support of the show. And, I'm very glad that you enjoy it, that you relate to it, and that you wrote us. Thank you for sharing your experiences. And you guys can check out those websites that I mentioned in her email. So that's it, guys. That's all we have. I know this was a extra long show this month.
More to love.
Some of you like that. Some of you don't. I know it's pretty divided there. But thank you again very much for listening. We're actually going to be posting our album review as some bonus content later on in the month, so you guys can look forward to that. And of course, as I mentioned, we will be making an announcement either next month on the show or earlier than that on the YouTube channel for the project that I'm working on. If you guys are able to help support us financially to not only support this show, but the project that I'm working on, which is going to benefit you and is taking a lot of time and money, go ahead and head over to patreon.com/cemeteryconfessions. You can get rewards immediately, starting by signing up at just $1 a month. So go ahead and at least head over there, check out what kind of cool stuff you can get, and consider supporting the show and helping to keep us going, really, and keep us producing content. Because, you know, if there's no but if there's no desire for us to produce the show, then, you know, maybe
we cease to exist.
But I know there is, and I know you guys really enjoy the show. So thank you for the feedback. Thank you for sharing this with your friends, and thank you for signing up on Patreon. So until next time, until next month, stay dark. Number 5, somehow... Oh, my God.
What are you dropping over
Sorry.
there?
My ferrets are molesting the fuck out of a sweet roll.
You
over
have
there.
ferrets?
Yeah, I have 2 of them.
Oh my God!
And they're adorable.
I
I'll
can
put them...
fucking imagine.
Let me grab them, actually. I can show you. You can probably see them over there eating... Well, maybe not.
Oh my God! Don't make me square your ear off, because I will. Oh my fucking God, I can't. Oh my God. Oh
yeah,
my
we
God.
need to
Oh
do
my
a
God.
special
I'm
YouTube
sorry.
video with you and your ferrets.
I would be squealing really loud right now.
I did post one with my son, but I guess my ferrets are cuter. Alright, let me turn this up. So we've learned that Mark is a communist.
Damn
pig.
straight,
Okay,
comrades.
All right, actually, give me 1 second here. I'm going to change into my pajama pants because these pants are chafing me. So,
Oh, that's nice.
give me like 5 seconds.
And he's stripping right now.
Okay. He's Buffalo Billing it right now.
He's tucking himself in.
Buffalo Bill?
You know.
Exactly.
Dancing around.
Putting lipstick on.
Listening to Q Lazarus.
Okay, I'm naked. All right.
I am.
I'm not actually naked.
Good.
Perfect.